Our story begins with a man completely swarmed by a frantic mob of reporters. They're all shouting over each other, desperate for answers about the incredible rumors surrounding him. Did he really clear an A-rank gate all by himself? And is it true he subdued an S-rank hunter? The questions become more pointed, with one reporter cutting through the noise to ask if he's been deliberately concealing his true power level this whole time. Amidst the chaos, the man simply stands there, his expression unreadable and serious as he absorbs the intense scrutiny. But inside his head, it's a different story. He reflects that making money as a hunter was just a coincidence, a complete accident. He doesn't have the amazing abilities everyone thinks he does. He believes it was all just a combination of pure luck and some clever bluffing that got him to this point. Another reporter asks about his future plans, citing the nation's rising expectations for safety. The question barely registers, as his internal monologue is far harsher. He thinks of himself as nothing more than a worthless piece of trash. He feels so disconnected from their heroic image of him that he can't even comprehend what they're asking him anymore. As he finally prepares to speak, the word plans rings hollow in his mind. He scoffs internally, wondering how things could have spiraled into such a mess if he'd ever actually had a plan to begin with. A chilling thought grips him. What would happen if everyone found out the truth? He's not some superpowered hunter, but just a man with a power level closer to an F rank. The potential consequences flash through his mind. First, he's certain the powerful S-rankers he supposedly subdued would be furious enough to come after him. He specifically remembers making a powerful enemy out of a top ranker during a gate mission, and he highly doubts that person would just let him be. He feels he might even end up cursed. The weight of his situation crashes down on him as he realizes this is a complete and utter disaster. Taking a breath, he finally opens his mouth, beginning to address the reporter's questions about what he's going to do from now on. After a brief, tense pause, he gives his answer. He has no comment. His simple refusal to answer sends a shockwave through the crowd, and for a moment, the reporters are stunned into silence. But the silence doesn't last. They immediately take his no comments as an admission of guilt, and the questions erupt once more. They demand to know if this means he's been manipulating his rank and if he has anything to say to the Hunters Association. The scene descends back into chaos, with the reporters shouting his title, pleading for him to just give them a proper response. Amidst the barrage of questions, Kim Giryok falls completely silent, his expression unreadable. He tunes out the noise, his mind racing as he weighs his options. He knows that no matter what the papers print tomorrow, his life is already ruined. But he realizes that letting this misunderstanding continue is no different from being shackled by this hunter job he never wanted. As the reporters continue to shout his name, a slight tremble runs through him, a sign of the immense pressure he's under. Suddenly, his demeanor shifts. In a voice as cold as ice, he snaps, telling the reporters that he has no comment and refers to them as mammal brats. The entire crowd is stunned into silence, completely taken aback by his sharp and bizarre insult. The reporters quickly recover, demanding that he clarify his statement and explain what he meant by calling them mammals. One of them connects his arrogance to the rumors, asking if this is proof that he really is an S-rank hunter. Another reporter pleads with him to calm down and just give them a straight answer, but the chaos only intensifies. Giryok's mind drifts again. He thinks it doesn't matter whether he's revealed as a powerful being in hiding or a complete fraud. He feels his time on this rotten planet is limited anyway. He finds himself wondering, just where did everything start to go so wrong? His thoughts trace back to the beginning, his resignation. But to understand that, he first needs to clarify a critical fact. He isn't from this planet at all. The story shifts back to his home, a planet called Alfauri, which boasts a highly advanced magical civilization. There, his role as the strongest wizard was incredibly significant. But one day, a single, rebellious thought entered his mind. The thought was simple and absolute. He had to quit his damn job. His position was treated as social service, which meant he worked himself to the bone for no pay. A 640-day work year with 0 holidays was considered standard. To make matters worse, technological advancements had made sleep and food obsolete, turning constant overtime into an expected part of life. He couldn't even remember the last time he had actually managed to leave work on time. The real problem wasn't wanting to quit, it was figuring out how he could possibly do it. Because of his important role, he couldn't just walk away. Restrictions were in place to prevent high-ranking individuals from abandoning their posts. For example, if he tried to use teleportation magic, he'd get a painful electric shock to the brain. And even if he did manage to escape his workplace, the entire planet was under the ruler's thumb, leaving him with absolutely nowhere to hide. Trapped and desperate, a dark and drastic idea began to form in his mind. What if he killed his superior? But he quickly dismissed the thought, remembering it was impossible. A powerful binding prevented him from harming anyone from his home planet. This restriction was so absolute that it even applied to himself, making suicide an incredibly difficult, if not impossible, escape route. With all his options seemingly exhausted, he felt utterly cornered. As he continued to contemplate how he could possibly resign, a new idea began to form. He realized that while magic could certainly restrict his physical body, his soul wasn't bound by the same rules. He knew that no magic technique existed yet that was capable of confining a soul. A spark of hope ignited within him. If his theory was correct, it meant his soul could escape freely, couldn't it? He seized the idea with fierce determination, believing this was his one true path to freedom. Driven by this singular goal, he embarked on a long and grueling journey of research and development. 10 years passed in a flash. After countless trials and errors, he finally perfected a one-of-a-kind magic, the manipulation of the soul. His plan was to separate his soul from his body and settle on a distant planet where no one could ever pursue him. As his soul drifted away from his physical form, a wave of triumph washed over him. It had worked. He had actually succeeded. He reveled in his own genius, exclaiming that he was finally leaving that dreaded place. He mentally mocked his former captors, wishing them luck managing the planet without him. At long last, he was finally resigning. What he had just achieved was, in fact, the first instance of possession and reincarnation in recorded history. And with that, his soul's journey concluded as he opened his eyes for the first time on Earth, reborn as a human. He slowly opened his eyes, taking in his new reality for the very first time. It had worked. He was human, inhabiting a brand new body. Tentatively, he moved his hand, testing the limits of his new form. He stared at the appendage with a profound sense of confusion. In his mind, he could only describe the strange sight as a long, moving mass of protein. He was at least fortunate that the body's original soul seemed to have departed only recently. A wave of confidence washed over him as he concluded that the plan was a success. For someone with his power, he thought, reincarnation was nothing special. He tried speaking a few words aloud, relieved to find that the language substitution felt completely natural. Moving the body also seemed to pose no problems. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, wondering why the process was only partially complete. According to his plan, he should have inherited the memories perfectly, so seamlessly that even the body's parents wouldn't notice a change. He questioned why it hadn't worked. He struggled to remember anything at all about his new host, but the memories were just scattered, fragmented pieces. Suddenly, his focus was shattered by a splitting headache. The headache was instantly replaced by a sharp, stabbing pain in his abdomen, making him curse and wonder if something else had gone horribly wrong. He doubled over, the intense agony threatening to overwhelm him. Then, a horrifying realization hit him. This body hadn't just died, it had starved to death. His mind raced back to the conditions he had set for the magic. The first rule was to reincarnate into the creature with the highest magic power on the planet, assuming that would also lead to the most intelligent species. What he had completely overlooked, he now understood, was the physical state of the body he was about to inhabit. He had thought it wouldn't matter what kind of body he ended up in, but this was far worse than he could have imagined. An agonizing pain burned through him, feeling as though someone had poured acid directly into his stomach. Weakened, he crawled from the bed towards the door, realizing with dawning horror that his magic wasn't working. He figured he'd need some time to adapt to the magical properties of this new planet. Struggling to his feet, he knew he had to push through the pain. His most immediate priority was to find something, anything, to put in his stomach to make it stop. Driven by a desperate hunger, he finally reached the door and pushed his way outside. As he stepped out, his eyes widened in shock. He was completely taken aback by the bright, unfamiliar light. He couldn't help but contrast it with his former home, a world mostly covered in liquid where starlight rarely penetrated, leaving everything in a dark, bluish haze. But this new place, illuminated by the glow of a city, was completely different from anything he had ever known. He stood there for a moment, simply taking in the overwhelming new environment. The world felt so strange and alien. It was bright and warm, with a dry atmosphere and the solid, unyielding feeling of hard ground beneath his feet. The sheer novelty of it all was almost enough to make him forget his suffering. But a sudden growl from his stomach shattered the moment. He knew he couldn't afford to be distracted. He had to find something to eat, and fast. He began to search desperately, but no matter where he looked, there was nothing. Clutching his stomach, he wandered through the alleys, wondering how it was possible that there was absolutely no food to be found anywhere. The emptiness of the place was astounding, and his hope began to fade with each step. A grim thought crossed his mind. It was no wonder the previous owner of this body had starved to death. As his hunger intensified, his vision began to turn gray. Panic set in as he realized that, at this rate, he was on track to suffer the exact same fate all over again. Just as he was about to collapse, his eyes caught sight of something small moving on the ground. It was a cockroach. He thought it looked incredibly small for an insect, but quickly told himself that this was absolutely not the time to be picky. Resigning himself to his fate, he picked up the bug and prepared to eat it, offering a silent thanks for the meal. But at that exact moment, his attention was drawn to a small child who was walking past him. He was surprised to see another being of his own kind in this desolate place. He mentally corrected himself, thinking that youngin might be a more fitting term. His focus then shifted entirely to the object the child was holding in its mouth. Without a second thought, he tossed the cockroach aside. He could tell the child had food, and his instincts screamed that it would taste incredibly good. He was suddenly faced with a profound moral dilemma, torn between his desperation and his conscience. Should he steal the food from a child to survive? He watched the child walk away, his mind racing as he weighed his options. The gnawing hunger made the decision for him. He began to follow the kid, his eyes locked on the prize. But then, just as he was getting closer, the kid suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. It was clear the boy had noticed he was being followed. The child turned around, his face filled with worry. The whole situation looked incredibly suspicious to anyone who might see it. Suddenly, the kid took off running, trying to get away from the creepy adult. The man was stunned, calling out in confusion for the boy to wait. His chance for food gone, his attention was immediately drawn to a plant growing nearby, wondering what it was. Upon closer inspection, he saw a sign next to the plant, marking it for ornamental use. He realized it probably wasn't edible. Despite this, he picked a piece and put it in his mouth, deciding that it was still a better option than stealing food from someone. Just then, a loud voice echoed from the direction the kid had run, causing him to look up in surprise. Recognizing the sound as the kid's scream, he realized he had to find out what was wrong and immediately headed toward the commotion. As he got closer, the sounds of pure terror grew louder, confirming his fears that the boy was in serious trouble. The source of the child's fear was a massive bird-like creature. The boy could only stammer out the word monsters as he stared at it, frozen. The creature's gaze locked onto the terrified child, identifying him as its target. Without hesitation, the monster began its pursuit, chasing after the small, fleeing boy. It lunged forward, snapping its massive beak in a vicious attack. The beak clamped down not on the boy himself, but on the backpack he was wearing, catching him. With a powerful tug, the monster ripped the bag clean off the boy's shoulders. The force of the yank sent the child tumbling hard onto the pavement. Towering over him, the monster took a menacing step forward, causing the boy to gasp in fear. It struck again, but somehow, the boy managed to dodge the attack, scrambling away just in the nick of time. As the monster gave chase once more, the boy screamed desperately for someone, anyone, to save him. Finally arriving at the scene, our hero saw the chaos firsthand. He was shocked to see what looked like a bird, but one that was as massive as a house, chasing the kid. He couldn't believe his eyes. One moment he was just walking down the street, and the next, a giant monster's neck was getting tangled in the overhead electrical wires. The sight left him completely stunned. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of wretched planet this was for such terrifying events to be so commonplace. But as his mind raced, a new thought began to form. He paused, considering that maybe, just maybe, this terrifying situation was actually a good thing. He realized that the body he now inhabited held memories of its own, including the fact that creatures like this bird were edible. A sense of confidence washed over him. Finally, a wild animal worthy of being his prey. As the strongest grand sorcerer, he felt he could defeat this monster with nothing more than a cough. A smirk crept across his face as he imagined his future. Once he adapted to the magic here, he believed conquering this small planet would be no trouble at all. His attention was drawn back to the massive creature. He squinted, noticing something strange about it. He could see a distinct blue energy swirling around the monster's form, a power he hadn't expected to find. His focus sharpened as he began to recognize the nature of this energy. As he instinctively started to gather the ambient power around himself, he realized with a jolt that it was magic power, and it was incredibly strong. He felt it sweeping through every cell in his body, a sensation that left no doubt in his mind. This was unquestionably the magic of Earth. But there was a problem he hadn't anticipated. Suddenly, he collapsed to the ground, completely overwhelmed. There was just so much power, far too much for him to handle at once. He struggled to process the sheer scale of it. If the magic on other planets he'd visited was like a small bucket of water, then being here was like diving headfirst into an entire swimming pool. This was an alien's first impression of Earth, a golden land of unimaginable power. He felt like he had hit the jackpot. His eyes sparkled with excitement at the possibilities. With magic this abundant, he was convinced there was nothing he couldn't do. Just then, a small voice cut through his thoughts as a young boy yelled out, calling for a mister to help. As the MC stood up, the boy desperately pleaded for help, quickly correcting himself and calling him uncle instead. He couldn't help but think about how unlucky the child was to have asked an alien for help. Striking a rather cringe-worthy pose, he mused that the boy was fortunate this particular alien happened to be a grand sorcerer. He then agreed to help the child, but told him there was one condition. His condition was simple. The boy had to give him whatever he was holding in his hand. The child could only stare back in shock. At that very moment, the monster let out a terrifying roar, and the boy was completely overcome with fear. Screaming in terror, the boy quickly agreed to the deal, promising to give him the item and begging for his life to be spared. The child immediately scrambled behind the MC for protection, a move the MC silently criticized as foolish for turning one's back on a predator. With a nonchalant glance, the MC turned his full attention to the monstrous creature before him. He calmly instructed the child to stay back for the time being, confident in his ability to handle the situation. After all, as the head of the 1st Mage Division tasked with defending an entire planet, he felt he could separate the beast's bones from its flesh with a single gesture. But, shockingly, nothing happened. A heavy silence filled the air as the child watched him, a look of awkward confusion on their face. The MC was utterly baffled by the failure, unable to comprehend what was going on. He began to wonder if he was just feeling tense because of this unfamiliar environment, searching for any logical reason for his power's absence. He couldn't quite believe this was happening to him, the absurdity of the situation almost making him laugh. In a frantic attempt to regain control, he tried an explosion spell, but it failed. He quickly shifted to water magic, which also failed. Desperate, he even attempted shadow invocations and curses, but none of his powers would respond. He froze in place, a wave of cold panic washing over him as he struggled to understand what was happening. looking down at his own hand in disbelief. The horrifying realization finally dawned on him. His magic wasn't working at all. Our story kicks off with the main character in a full-blown panic, running for his life and desperately crying out for someone to save him. In his terror, he doesn't even look where he's going and sprints right out into the road, directly into the path of an oncoming car. With a screech of tires, the driver manages to slam on the brakes, stopping just in the nick of time. His reckless dash into the street has brought the busy road to a standstill, causing a massive traffic jam. An angry driver leans out of his window, shouting at him and questioning if he's crazy or has some kind of death wish. But the main character can't even process the driver's anger. His mind is consumed by the thought that if his pursuer sees him, it will never stop chasing him, so he knows he has to change direction fast. And that's when we see what he's running from. A terrifying bird-like monster is relentlessly chasing him down. The creature closes the distance and leap. He pushes through the pain and continues to run with every ounce of power he has left. He can't figure out why, even on a main road surrounded by people, this monster is only targeting him. To make matters worse, he's feeling incredibly weak since he hasn't eaten. The relentless chase is taking its toll, and he's quickly becoming exhausted and out of breath. Realizing his current path isn't working, he decides he has to change directions again and makes a sharp turn. It turns out the massive bird that was destroying cars has now locked onto him as its next target. The creature launches itself into the air with a powerful jump. It soars high above, gliding effortlessly as if it were truly flying. He watches in disbelief, wondering how such a large creature could possibly take to the sky. Without warning, the monster bird dives straight for him. He immediately runs, panicked that he's about to be eaten. In that critical moment, a sudden, sharp pain shoots through his knee, causing him to cry out. The unexpected pain leads him to a terrible realization. This body might have some kind of disability. Ignoring the pain, he sees the bird descending and pushes himself to dash forward, trying to get out of its path. But his leg gives out from under him, and he collapses, falling flat on his face. Helpless on the ground, he struggles to push himself back up. Just then, the massive bird swoops past, narrowly missing him. It seems the creature couldn't stop its dive, crashing hard into the ground and tumbling a great distance. The chaotic landing ends with its beak getting stuck deep inside a concrete structure. Overwhelmed by the close call, he instinctively squeezes his eyes shut. A moment later, he cautiously opens his eyes to see what happened. He looks on with a sense of surprise, trying to process the unbelievable scene before him. His mind raced, trying to figure out what had just happened. He questioned if it was possible that the creature had simply crashed into the wall all on its own. Observing the bird monster more closely, he couldn't help but wonder if it was just a simple-minded creature. It was hard to believe a bird could fly at such a dangerous angle, crash, and die. He thought that even scholars back on Earth would be fascinated by how such a foolish creature could exist. But as he began to drool, he snapped himself out of it, realizing this wasn't the time for scientific analysis. He cautiously touched the bird, and a new, more practical question popped into his head. Could he eat this? His mind went back to science, considering that since it was a species from this planet, its amino acid structure should be. His thoughts were suddenly cut short when he looked back and heard an unknown voice ask him how he did it. The voice belonged to a girl wearing a professional-looking suit. The girl just stared, completely stunned and amazed by what she was seeing. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a young boy was yelling for people to hurry. He shouted with a mix of fear and relief that some other man had been caught instead of him. As the boy ran, insisting they couldn't be late, the girl in the suit was also seen rushing toward our hero's location. Arriving on the scene, the girl asked a policeman if this was the last confirmed location, to which he quickly agreed. Taking control of the situation, she ordered everyone else to stay where they were. Her mind reviewed the intel on the monster. It was a beginner killer, a bird monster from a sandy desert gate. Originally, it was just an E-rank threat, easily taken down by regular firearms. But something had changed. The beginner killer's rank had suddenly jumped to a much more dangerous C rank, all because it now charged with the speed of a missile. The girl knew this was bad. She realized that any hunter ranked below C would be taken out before they even knew what hit them. They needed to move immediately, before any casualties occurred. But just as she was about to spring into action, she stopped dead in her tracks, suddenly noticing a person standing right in the monster's path. She could barely process what she was seeing, because right there, standing with an unnerving calm in front of the defeated monster, was a young man. She was completely shocked, her mind reeling as she wondered if he had somehow managed to take down that C-rank threat all by himself. Just then, a policeman arrived, approaching her and asking what had happened, addressing her as Hunter Sean Woo-Yan. The young man turned at the sound of their voices and casually told his unseen companion that he found a police officer. The officer, looking relieved, immediately thanked the young man for his hard work. He explained that they'd received a report about a monster and had rushed over, expressing how fortunate it was that a hunter was nearby to handle the situation. But the young man just looked confused, repeating the word hunters, as if he'd never heard it before. He seemed to be searching his memory for the meaning of the word, but admitted that he couldn't remember. As the policeman continued to thank him for capturing the monster, the girl stood silently, her mind racing. She couldn't help but wonder how he could have possibly caught it so quickly. She thought deeply about the situation, questioning whether he had really just stumbled upon the creature by chance. Her knowledge of monsters kicked in. She recalled that the beginner killer's natural habitat is a sandy gate where movement is difficult, which ironically makes it easier to fight on solid ground outside the gate. In fact, on firm terrain, one could theoretically defeat it without even laying a hand on it, simply by redirecting its charge. But there was a crucial catch to that strategy. Observing the monster's body, she knew that such a feat was only possible for someone with the visual acuity to track its incredible speed, and looking closely, she could tell it was defeated using a proper, calculated method. If that was the case, she realized, then this mysterious person had to be a hunter of at least C rank. But instead of basking in his victory, the mysterious man suddenly turns his attention to the small child he'd just saved, pointing to get his attention. He reaches out his hand, asking the little boy if he remembered the promise they had made earlier. With a reluctant look, the child hands over the carton of juice he was holding. Without missing a beat, the man immediately begins to drink it. His reaction is one of pure delight. He thinks the taste is absolutely incredible. He muses to himself that it's been ages since he evolved into a body that doesn't need food, yet this simple drink is unbelievably delightful. The girl watches in disbelief, wondering if he really just took what the kid was eating. The poor boy can only look on sadly, mourning his lost tangerine drink. Deciding to intervene, the girl steps forward and offers a polite hello. She introduces herself as Sion Wooyon and explains that she's from the Hunter Association. As they shake hands, she compliments him on dispatching the monster without a single scratch. He simply agrees, oblivious to the fact that his hand is drenched in the sticky juice. After wiping her hand, Sion Wooyon asks if he's a freelance hunter, since she doesn't recognize him, and requests his hunter ID to file a report. He's completely thrown, having no clue what a hunter ID is, and asks her to explain. Realizing he needs to come up with an excuse, he decides to just tell her that he doesn't have his ID with him at the moment. Seon Wooyon seems to accept this, but explains that she can just look him up in the association's hunter registry instead and ask for his name. He's trapped. He panics internally, realizing with a jolt that he doesn't even know the name of the body he's currently inhabiting. Sion Wooyon just waits, her gaze steady as he struggles for an answer. Her suspicions growing, she presses further, asking if he's even registered as a hunter or taken the awakening test. Then, a look of excited realization dawns on her face. She asks if he could possibly have used his awakened abilities on a main road without even being registered with the association, and warns him that what he's done is illegal, but our hero looks completely unfazed by the accusation. Internally, though, he's starting to get a little nervous, admitting to himself that he's not entirely sure what's going on. A flicker of panic sets in as he wonders if he could actually be in serious trouble for this. Thinking fast, he turns and lies, insisting that he is, of course, registered with the association. He continues the bluff, claiming he just left his hunter ID at home and offers to go get it immediately if they'll just wait for him. With his excuse made, he quickly leaves the scene. As he walks away, he makes a mental note to never, ever come down this road again. Back at his home, he begins to search for the ID he claimed to have. He spots an ID card, thinking for a moment that he's found it. Looking closer, he reads the name Kim Kir-yo and realizes this is his new identity. But then it hits him. There's no sign of a hunter ID anywhere. This confirms his fear that the body he's in has never actually been registered as a hunter. His attention then shifts to a nearby ashtray and cigarettes, and he can't help but wonder why there are so many of them. He picks up a cigarette, examining it with a thoughtful expression. And just like that, a memory floods his mind. He remembers now. The previous owner of this body smoked cigarettes all the time. He's horrified by the realization that the guy was a heavy smoker, knowing that for a wizard, smoking is basically a death sentence. He thinks about the mechanics of magic, how wizards combine their internal magic with the external magic of nature to create spells. He then asks himself a critical question: what organ is responsible for combining these two forms of magic? The answer is, of course, the respiratory system, specifically, the lungs. And suddenly, the danger of his predecessor's smoking habit becomes terrifyingly clear. With a surge of furious understanding, he slams his fist into the ground. So that's why he couldn't cast any magic. He can't wrap his head around it, wondering what could have possibly possessed the body's previous owner to deliberately ruin his own lungs. Back in his world, Alfari, where nearly everyone could use magic, this kind of self-sabotage would be completely unimaginable. He had assumed the people here were just primitive, but he never expected them to be this insane. Letting out a deep sigh, he tries to force himself to calm down and think rationally. As he gets to his feet, he accepts the reality of the situation. What's done is done. He realizes it's his own fault for being so blinded by the sheer amount of magic in this body that he didn't even notice its critical flaws. But his despair quickly turns into determination. There has to be a way to fix this body. He reminds himself of everything he's already overcome. After all, he managed to escape from that place. He can't just give up over something like this. With renewed purpose, he makes a vow. He will live the rest of his life on this new land, and he will absolutely find a way to be happy. But his grand plans are cut short as the scene abruptly changes. He's no longer outside, but sitting inside a police station. A police officer across from him breaks the silence, asking why someone who seems so knowledgeable would have done what he did. Our hero can only sit there, silent. Finally, he manages to mumble a simple apology. The harsh reality of his situation begins to sink in. He wonders if he completely underestimated what it would be like to live on another planet, shocked that he was taken in by the police just a few hours after arriving on Earth. About 10 minutes before starting his personal investigation, our hero was walking through the city. Looking unwell, he was suddenly struck by an extreme sense of hunger. He knew there was still a mountain of things to investigate about Earth, but his immediate priority was clear. He had to find a way to solve his sudden malnourishment. Suddenly, an enticing smell caught his attention, making him wonder where it was coming from. Following the aroma, he found himself standing right in front of a pork soup shop. Before he knew it, a steaming hot bowl of pork soup was served and ready for him to eat. A wave of relief washed over him. He couldn't believe food had been this close the whole time, feeling he had gone through a lot of unnecessary trouble for nothing. With his hunger about to be satisfied, he decided it was finally time to dig in. He took his first bite and his eyes widened in pure shock at the taste. It was absolutely delicious. Though the soup was so hot it hurt his mouth, he couldn't stop himself. It was as if his hand was moving on its own, and he felt himself completely falling for the incredible food. But later, back at the station, he reflected on the meal. Everything had been great up to a certain point. A police officer sighed, wondering aloud if the country was in some kind of trouble, what with young people all dining and dashing. Our hero tried to explain that he truly just forgot to pay. The officer looked at him with a puzzled expression, but at that moment, another policeman recognized him. The second officer pointed at him, asking if he wasn't the same hunter he had met earlier. The officer decided to be lenient, letting him off with a warning for his first offense, but cautioned him not to repeat his actions. The main character quickly promised he would definitely pay the restaurant back. Just as the main character asked if he was free to go, the officer stopped him, pulling something out and telling him to wait for just a moment. The policeman explained that their earlier investigation revealed he wasn't registered with the Hunter Association, leading him to believe that he must have awakened his abilities very recently. He handed him a leaflet for the Awakening Examination Center, suggesting he pay a visit. To ease any concerns, the officer assured him that the examination was free of charge. With a hint of envy, the officer strongly encouraged him to get tested. The main character, however, was completely lost, wondering to himself what this whole awakening concept was even about. He silently questioned if this was common knowledge for people on Earth, a concept he was somehow supposed to already understand. Since the officer had been so insistent, he figured he might as well give it a try and see what it was all about. Following the directions, he eventually made his way to the recommended location. He soon found himself standing before a large, official-looking building. Looking up at the sign, he confirmed that this was indeed the examination center. But as he took in his surroundings, a sudden and unexpected sense of familiarity washed over him. He realized with a jolt that Kim Kuryo, the original owner of this body, had been to this exact place before. A memory surfaced, not his own, but Kuryo's, of receiving a dismal F-rank evaluation during his last visit. The memory solidifies in his mind. The original Kim Kuryo was, in fact, an F-rank awakened being. Just as this realization sinks in, a familiar voice calls out from behind him. "It's San Woo-yan," greeting him and noting they've met again. He offers a simple greeting in return, and she immediately asks what brings him to the Hunter Association. Wasting no time, she follows up by asking if she could finally get her hunter's license from him now that he's here. Her question sends a jolt through him as he suddenly remembers the lie he'd told earlier about having a license. Kuryo decides it's time to be honest. He apologizes, explaining that his earlier statement was made in a moment of panic. He finally confesses the truth. He doesn't actually have a hunter's license. Hearing this, Seon Woo-yeon admits she had been wondering why he never came back for her. Kuryo clarifies that while he is registered as an awakened individual, he was so disappointed with his test results that he never bothered to apply for the actual license card, leaving her utterly confused. He then reveals the reason for his disappointment. His official rank is F. Seon Woo-yeon is stunned, questioning how an F rank could possibly have defeated the notorious beginner killer. Kuryo simply brushes it off, attributing his victory to pure luck. He offers a ridiculous explanation, claiming the creature was so foolish that it rammed its own head into a wall. His absurd story leaves Seon Woo-yeon standing completely frozen, too surprised to even speak. Seon Woo-yeon tries to make sense of his story, thinking to herself that it's not entirely impossible. She recalls cases where inexperienced beginner killers have died from failing to adapt to a new environment, but her memory clashes with that idea. The person she saw faced the beast with the relaxed expression of a veteran who had killed hundreds of C-rank monsters, showing not even a hint of fear. This makes her wonder why he would lie about his rank. A dark thought crosses her mind. Most people who hide their true power are usually dangerous individuals planning something illegal. As he stares at her with a menacing look, she begins to fear that he might be one of those dangerous people. Trying to hide her suspicion, she quickly agrees with him, saying he must have been lucky since beginner killers are known for their low intelligence. Meanwhile, he observes her, noting internally that Earthlings use subtle facial muscle movements to convey emotions. He decides he should learn to do the same to appear more friendly. Ready to put his new idea into practice, he decides to give it a try right then and there. He confirms that he was indeed very lucky, but as he does, he forces a smile that comes across as incredibly creepy and unnatural. Sion Wooyan is completely shaken by his bizarre expression. All her doubts solidify into one terrifying thought: he is definitely suspicious. Her mind races, focusing on one goal: getting out of there safely. As a pretext, she suddenly claims she forgot to give him something and nervously asks for his name. He tells her his name is Kim Kiryeo. Stuttering, she repeats his name and tells him to take what she's offering. To his surprise, she pushes a stack of money into his hands. He is utterly bewildered by the gesture. He wonders what kind of amazing custom this is, where people offer money as a simple greeting. Completely confused, he asks her why she's giving this to him. Sion Wooyan explains that he had left the beginner killer's corpse behind, so she had to dispose of it. The money she handed him is his share from the sale. His mind reels as he tries to process this. He remembers the soup he ate that morning cost 8,000 won, and he realizes with a shock that this single piece of paper could buy him 6 entire bowls. Struggling to believe it, he asks if the bird's feathers are just that expensive. She clarifies that the body itself is worthless because it's too soft. The real prize, she tells him, was the C-rank magic stone inside it, which goes for 2 million won. The number stops him in his tracks. He immediately questions her, pointing out that if the stone was worth 2 million won, why was his share only 50,000? She hesitates for a moment before beginning her explanation. She reveals that she processed all the damage costs incurred from his fight with the monster under her own name, leaving him completely silent. She adds a pointed comment that if certain people hadn't fled the scene, they could have legally obtained hunter immunity and avoided the fees altogether. The weight of his actions hits him, and he can only manage to offer her a sincere apology. He tells her it's alright and wishes her a good afternoon. With their business concluded, Sion Wooyan turns and walks away. He stands there for a moment, left alone with his thoughts and the crisp banknote in his hand. The staggering figure echoes in his mind as he stares into space. 2 million won. The potential of it all was just beginning to sink in. He scoffs at the memory of the monster. Back in his homeland, a creature like that bird-headed thing would be as insignificant as a bug crawling on the street. But here, looking at the money he earned, the reality is starkly different. 200,000 won just for twisting its neck. He quickly calculates that it's enough for 75 bowls of soup and rice. This solidifies his thinking. Survival requires money, and his goal in coming to this world is to live a happy life, not just get by. And to enjoy the kind of ideal lifestyle he truly wants, he'll need a lot more money than this. The conclusion is inescapable. He has to become a hunter. It's amazing how much can change in a day. He recalls how bleak his future seemed just that morning. The previous owner of his body was so poor that buying a single bowl of soup would have been his entire savings. But as he stares at a nearby billboard, he realizes everything is different now. He finally understands that being a hunter is a real path to making money. With newfound resolve, he decides he'll hunt with magic to make a living, even though he knows his own magic isn't quite working for him at the moment. He knows he'll need to find plenty of monsters to make this work. Just then, he overhears some passers-by mentioning that a gate has opened nearby. His ears perk up at the mention of a gate, a potential opportunity. Drawn by the commotion, he approaches the crowd and is completely captivated by the sight of the shimmering portal. He sees the open gate is being carefully guarded by 2 officers, a clear sign of its importance. He recalls that these gates are the hunting grounds for Earth's hunters and are ranked based on their magical density. He knows that the higher the gate's rank, the more dangerous the monsters lurking inside will be. He studies the swirling energy of the gate, trying to understand what he's looking at. As he watches, he senses something off about it, noticing a very unusual mana pattern. Remembering that these portals are filled with monsters, he feels a strong urge to analyze this strange energy signature more closely. But as he looks around at the crowd and the guards, he realizes that getting inside this gate will be nearly impossible. He starts wondering if there might be any other gates nearby. Just then, something else catches his attention, a faint feeling he didn't notice before. He senses that the source is close and decides to follow the faint trail of mana. The path leads him into a dense forest where he discovers a second, unguarded gate. Seeing his chance, he pushes deeper into the woods, making his way towards the hidden portal. The terrain is rough, and after struggling up a steep mountain slope, he has to stop for a moment, remarking to himself how the climb almost did him in. As he continues his trek, he comes across some strange warning tape. He pauses, wondering what it could be, and muses to himself that Earthlings certainly have a peculiar sense of aesthetics. He can't quite wrap his head around why on earth they would choose to decorate plants in this way. Meanwhile, sometime later, a group of hunters has gathered at the entrance to the gate, preparing for their mission. One of the hunters, Yoon Shung, makes a call to his manager, reporting that his team has just arrived on site. On the other end of the line, the manager acknowledges his report and immediately asks if there are any civilians nearby. Yoon Sung assures him that everything is fine, explaining that the control line has been set up properly to keep everyone out. The manager sighs, complaining that the constant mutations are wearing him down and that he's lost count of how many times the rank has changed this month alone. Yoon Shung, however, confidently tells him not to worry and that they will begin the investigation right away. Finishing the call, Yoon Shung turns to his team with a look of confidence and instructs them to move out. As the hunters step through the shimmering gate, Yoon Sung recoils from the terrible smell, complaining that it stinks like a cave in the middle of summer. He quickly checks his watch, reading the measurements. He informs the others that, according to the readings, the internal magical density is at the level of a D-rank dungeon. One of the hunters remarks that this is always how it goes, explaining that it's practically a rule. Whenever a gate feels off, its rank always jumps up by 2 levels. While Yoon Seung cautiously scans their surroundings, another hunter dismisses any potential danger, already making plans to finish quickly and grab a drink. The other hunters are completely relaxed, but an uneasy Yoon Seung suggests they should slow down, feeling they're moving too fast. His concern is immediately brushed aside by another hunter who asks why they should even bother. Yoon Seung elaborates, explaining that he's on edge because they've walked quite a distance without encountering any signs of monsters. His words hang in the tense silence of the dungeon, but the others seem to ignore his warning. One of them even mocks him, questioning why someone so young is always so timid and overly cautious. To prove his point, the hunter reminds everyone that they have An Yoon Seung, a powerful A-rank hunter, on their team. But at that very moment, Yoon Seung's eyes lock onto something in the distance. The hunter confidently finishes his sentence, asking what there could possibly be to worry about. Just as the words leave his mouth, a huge monster materializes before them, already preparing to attack. Our hero makes his way through the winding passages of the cave, venturing deeper into the unknown. But something feels off. He realizes he's already deep inside, yet he hasn't seen a single monster. He begins to wonder if he misunderstood the gate's nature, questioning the eerie silence. Trusting his instincts, he decides to investigate, gathering a ball of glowing mana in his palm to get a better read on his surroundings. He pushes his senses outward, feeling for any trace of mana in the immediate area. Suddenly, he catches something, a distinct mana signature. Intrigued, he decides to follow this mysterious trail. As he gets closer, he analyzes the energy. It feels small and unrefined, yet it's absolutely brimming with vitality. He can't help but wonder if it belongs to a human. His suspicion is confirmed. Someone else has definitely entered this gate. He follows the trail deeper into the cavern, determined to find the source. Up ahead, the mana trail leads him toward a source of light and sound, and something unusual catches his attention. He cautiously peeks from behind a rock formation, his eyes widening as he tries to make sense of the unexpected scene unfolding before him. He sees a group of hunters confronting a terrifying monster, and he's left stunned, wondering just what that thing could be. His eyes fixated on the creature's massive hand, which was stained with fresh blood, a grim sign of the battle's brutality. It was an imposing sight, towering menacingly over the terrified group of hunters. Slowly, the creature uncurled its massive fist, revealing the gruesome outcome of its attack. Yoon was completely frozen, shocked to his very core by the horrifying scene unfolding before him. There on the ground lay the body of the cocky hunter. The other hunters couldn't believe their eyes, whispering in disbelief that their comrade had been taken down with a single, devastating blow. Snapping out of his shock, Yoon tried to calm his panicked comrades, urging them to get a grip because one wrong move could mean death for all of them. But as he tried to rally the others, a hunter screamed a desperate warning for Yoon to watch his back. The monster was lunging at him from behind. In that split second, a look of realization flashed across Yoon's face as he sensed the imminent danger. Without a moment's hesitation, he moved, reacting with incredible speed to the monster's deadly assault. He instantly activated his shield, a barrier of light materializing just in time to block the blow. The monster's attack slammed harmlessly against the defense, its force completely deflected. In that very same moment, he transitioned from defense to offense. He launched a powerful counterattack, surging forward with his shield leading the way. The immense energy emanating from his strike was so potent it shattered the very floor beneath them. The sheer force of the impact sent the monster staggering backward. Thrown completely off balance, the creature was left wide open and vulnerable. Without a moment's hesitation, Yoon seized the opportunity, leaping high above the monster. He then descended like a meteor, channeling all of his power into a devastating final blow. The attack connected with incredible force, crushing the massive monster beneath him. From a distance, the main character had been watching the entire spectacle unfold. Pouring everything he had into that one move left Yoon completely exhausted. But even in his weakened state, he didn't let his guard down for a second. The other hunters were in awe, commenting that this was the power they expected from Yoon Seung. They noted that even for a defensive class, an A-rank hunter's strength against such a big foe was undeniable. Believing the fight was over, Yoon told the others he would recover Kaolmin's body so they could all start heading back. But just as he let his focus slip, the monster suddenly stood back up, its eyes fixed on Yoon's back. He could only turn in shock, unable to believe what he was seeing. Yoon's battle instincts took over, and he immediately tried to react to the new threat. However, the monster was terrifyingly faster this time, closing the distance and grabbing Yoon before he could defend himself. Trapped in the beast's grip, Yoon could only struggle as the monster began to squeeze with crushing force. Without a moment's hesitation, the monster brutally slammed Yoon down into the earth with crushing force. The impact was devastating, leaving Yoon to spit up a mouthful of blood as his body trembled from the shock. But the assault wasn't over. The creature roughly pulled Yoon back towards it, ready for another attack. It then hurled him through the air with tremendous power, sending him crashing hard against the unforgiving ground. Watching the horrific scene unfold, the other hunters could only cry out Yoon Seung's name in sheer panic. Unfazed by their cries, the monster hefted a massive boulder, clearly intending to finish Yoon off for good. It raised the huge rock high above its head and brought it smashing down towards Yoon's prone body. Just as the rock was about to make impact, one of the other hunters noticed the imminent threat. Reacting in a flash, the hunter dashed forward and managed to slice the massive rock in two, saving Yoon's life. However, the heroic counterattack came at a great cost, as the sheer force of the impact shattered the hunter's sword to pieces. Staring at the useless hilt in his hand, the hunter could barely process what had just happened, muttering in disbelief about his now destroyed sword. Before he could even react to his disarmed state, the monster lunged forward, pressing its attack against the vulnerable hunter. The sheer force of the blow sent him flying, and he crashed violently against the cold stone wall of the dungeon. With his defeat, the situation turned dire, as now only a single hunter remained to face the terrifying beast. The last member of the party, a female hunter, was frozen in place, her face a mask of pure terror. She stood paralyzed by fear, unable to move or even think as the monster turned its attention to her. A small, choked sound was all she could manage to get out as the horrifying reality of her situation set in. Looming over its final victim, the monster slowly raised its massive, stone-like fist, preparing to end the fight. As the fist began its swift descent, the hunter let out a final, desperate scream, bracing for the inevitable impact. But in a flash of movement, Yoon appeared out of nowhere, diving in at the last possible second to block the deadly attack. With every ounce of his strength, Yoon endured the crushing force, holding his ground. He saw the mage frozen in terror and screamed that now was their only chance, urging her to cast the binding magic quickly. Yoon desperately explained that if they failed to hold the creature down at that very moment, none of them would escape with their lives. While straining to defend, he warned her that her hesitation would get their entire team wiped out. His voice grew frantic as he questioned what she was doing, pleading with his sister to just hurry up and act. Confused by her silence, Yoon risked a glance over his shoulder to look back at his sister. To his utter shock, he saw her leaving him behind, running away to save herself. He couldn't believe his eyes, calling out in disbelief to ask where she was going. But her terrified expression gave him the answer, and his heart sank as he realized she was truly abandoning them all to die. Yoon Sung couldn't believe it, desperately asking what would happen to their companion, Kaol Min. He insisted that this wasn't the right thing to do. His voice was filled with desperation as he simply pleaded with her not to go. At that moment, the monster's attack shattered their barrier, and his plea turned into a frantic cry for her not to run away. But his words were cut short as the creature seized the opening and slammed him viciously to the ground. He lay crushed on the unforgiving dungeon floor, the impact leaving him completely stunned. The attack was devastating, leaving him heavily injured and barely able to move. As he lay there, broken, he realized the feeling washing over him wasn't anger at the betrayal, but a profound and hollow emptiness. His mind drifted back to the past, to the moment he obtained a rare A-rank awakening during a dungeon break. After that, offers from all sorts of massive guilds had poured in. He remembered meeting good people, forming a team, and steadily increasing their achievements in conquering gates. Back then, everything had seemed to be going so smoothly. But all those good times felt like a cruel joke now. As the massive monster raised its foot to crush him, Yoon Sung could only despair, thinking it was all ending in such a miserable way. Suddenly, just as the foot began to descend, a small pebble smacked against the creature's back, halting its attack. The monster paused, its attention completely diverted from the man lying helpless beneath it. It turned to find the main character standing there. Watching the scene unfold, he knew he just couldn't stand by and let this happen. He recognized the creature instantly. It was a golem. He knew them as clay figures that moved using mana as their power source. His mind raced, recalling how these beings served all sorts of roles back in Alfauri, from the most mundane everyday tasks, like labor, running errands, and even construction work, but their utility extended far beyond peaceful duties. They were also formidable war machines. He reflected that Alfauri was a nation truly built on the labor of golems. He had a personal connection to them too, having even majored in golem weaponry. It all clicked into place. The reason this area was clear of monsters was because this golem was on guard duty, which led him to conclude that this gate must be private property. Regardless, he knew that since he'd woken the guard, getting away from here wasn't going to be easy. He steeled his resolve, accepting that he would just have to deal with the situation. As the golem raised its fist to strike, a thought crossed his mind. He might not be able to use magic right now, but he was confident there were always other ways to handle a problem. The massive golem lunged forward, its stony hands reaching out to grab him. But he was too quick, effortlessly sidestepping the clumsy attack with a calm focus. The creature didn't relent for a moment. It instantly pivoted, its attempted grab transforming into a swift, powerful punch aimed directly at him. Again, showing no signs of worry, he easily sidestepped the blow, letting the massive fist fly harmlessly past him. Growing more frustrated, the golem raised its fist high into the air, preparing another strike. It slammed its fist down with incredible force, but our hero had already anticipated the move, jumping back to safety. After dodging yet another attack, he paused and took a deep, centering breath, seemingly preparing for his next move. Despite his confident appearance, he admitted to himself that this was far from easy. He knew he could evade the attacks because of the golem's large, clumsy movements, but there was a serious problem. His current body was simply too weak to keep this up for long. As if to prove his point, the golem didn't give him a moment to rest. It lunged forward with another heavy punch, and he was forced to dodge once again. The hulking creature quickly turned, its stone body grinding as it locked onto his position. But this time, it attacked with surprising and immense speed, aiming to overwhelm him. He reacted instinctively, leaning back just in time to avoid the crushing blow. The attack was so close it was chilling, a stark reminder of how little room for error he had. Without pausing, the golem continued its relentless assault, forcing him to keep dodging on tired legs. His exhaustion finally caught up with him, and he stumbled backward, falling hard onto the ground. As the golem swung its massive fist down to finish him off, it overextended, getting its hand completely stuck in the earth. A grin spread across his face as he realized this was the perfect opportunity he had been maneuvering for. He knew that stopping the golem was, in fact, remarkably simple. The secret lay in the large gem embedded in its arm, which he recognized wasn't a decoration but a sophisticated magical energy detection sensor. All he needed to do was input the emergency stop command directly into that very sensor. Normally, such a command would be a closely guarded secret, known only by the golem's creator for security reasons. But he was confident that a model as crude as this one could be figured out with just a glance. He quickly began to write the command in the air with his mana. He completed the sequence and sent the command flying towards the immobilized golem. Immediately, the hulking stone creature began to shudder, reacting to the code. With a final shudder, the massive golem collapsed, falling face-first onto the ground with a heavy thud. He knew, however, that the danger wasn't over. He'd only activated the emergency stop command, which meant the golem wasn't completely shut down. Wasting no time, he climbed onto the creature's massive frame. To fully switch it to offline mode, he had to get to the core located in the center of its back. His focus narrowed on a single objective. Standing before the golem's power source, he knew what he had to do. The core had to be removed. He began to manually pry open the covering. He wasn't keen on doing this with his bare hands and no tools, but he realized he had no other choice. As he strained and lifted the heavy cover away, a brilliant, shining light burst forth from the opening. There it was, the golem's core, pulsing with energy. Without a moment's hesitation, he reached in and continued his work. With metallic snaps and tears, he began ripping and cutting the wires connected to the core, determined to finish the job. With a final, forceful tug, he ripped the golem's core right out of its chest cavity. Instantly, the light in the massive construct's eyes flickered and died, and the entire thing powered down, becoming nothing more than a lifeless statue. In the sudden silence, the dust from their battle began to settle. He took a moment to examine the glowing core in his hand, thinking to himself that its construction was surprisingly simple. His attention then snapped back to his fallen comrade, Yoon, who was still lying motionless on the ground, clearly injured. A wave of relief washed over him as he realized that despite the brutal fight, Yoon was still breathing. Just then, a small twitch of Yoon's hand confirmed it. He was alive. As Yoon teetered on the edge of consciousness, his mind drifted to a memory of his mother. He recalled her voice, filled with concern, telling him that while she understood his dream of being a hunter, she worried he didn't grasp how dangerous it truly was. In that memory, a younger, more confident Yoon had tried to ease her fears, telling her not to worry. He insisted that even if he didn't look like much, he was an A rank awakened. But his mother had gently countered, reminding him that just because he was strong didn't mean her worries were wrong. She told him she respected his wishes, but she couldn't help but be terrified of what might happen if things went wrong. Sensing her deep-seated fear, Yoon Sung reached out and gently took his mother's hand, calling her name to reassure her. He insisted that she didn't have to worry anymore because he was now a hunter who was officially recognized by others. With a kind smile, he made a heartfelt promise to show her just how successful he could be as a hunter. As his mother's worried expression finally began to lighten, he pleaded with her to just trust him this one time. Feeling that he had finally eased her mind, he announced that it was time for him to go. But just as he turned to leave, his mother called out his name, stopping him in his tracks. She looked at him with a warm smile, her final words, a simple request for him to be careful at work. It was this very memory, that fateful conversation, that flashed through his mind as he lay on the brink of death. Fueled by that memory, he began to rise, his body trembling and shaking with the immense effort. As he slowly, painfully pushed himself upward, his eyes fell upon something that made him stop. There, standing over the remains of the defeated golem, was the main character. Yoon Sung stared, completely baffled, trying to figure out what could have possibly happened. His mind raced as he wondered if this stranger had somehow managed to defeat the creature barehanded. But a more urgent question took over. How had he gotten inside? Yoon Sung was sure a security line was in place, which made him consider a new, unsettling possibility. He questioned if this mysterious person could also be a hunter. As Yoon Sung tried to make sense of it all, the main character nonchalantly tossed the golem's core away. Then, he turned and started walking directly toward Yoon Sung, who felt a surge of panic. Trapped by his injuries, Yoon Sung cursed his own helplessness. He was still unable to move properly, completely vulnerable as the stranger approached. A deep sense of worry began to set in as the distance between them closed. The main character finally stopped, standing right in front of the injured hunter. Yoon Sung looked up, his expression filled with terror, as the main character got his attention with a simple greeting. Then, completely defying Yoon Sung's fears, he extended a hand and asked if he needed help at a massive, modern building, where a serious discussion is about to unfold. A man, the director, glares at a tablet displaying an article about the first A-rank Transcendence Gate in Korea. He's clearly annoyed, muttering about the sensationalist headlines from the Good News Daily. Beside him stands the hunter, Yoon Sung, now recovered. He tries to point out that the article isn't the real issue, but the director simply acknowledges his presence, his focus elsewhere. The director's frustration boils over as he questions why the future guild had to be the ones involved in this mess. He presses Yoon Sung, finding it unbelievable that another hunter defeated the monster, yet Yoon Sung doesn't even know their name. He argues that anyone strong enough to surpass Yoon Sung should be famous. The mystery deepens as the director notes that no one seems to have a clear description of this person, leading him to suspect they might be a powerful, unregistered hunter. He expresses relief that the reporters are focused on the A-rank monster for now, fearing the consequences if the full story got out. Yoon Sung, however, clearly disagrees and tries to interrupt him. The director cuts him off, insisting he's only saying all this for Yoon Sung's own sake, warning that this incident could tarnish his entire career. He reminds the hunter of a harsh truth. In their world, even an A-ranker becomes a target for others the moment they show any weakness. Frustrated, the director finally asks the big question, why didn't Yoon Sung just say he caught the golem himself? Faced with this direct challenge, Yoon Sung falls into a heavy silence. Breaking his silence, Yoon Sung begins with a simple apology. With a sad expression, he explains that he felt compelled to be honest, considering it the bare minimum of courtesy he could show to the hunter who saved him. He adds that the person just didn't seem like the type to engage in illegal activities. The director, still skeptical, asks if he's absolutely sure. Yoon Sung insists that if the mysterious hunter held any ill will, they wouldn't have been left alive. He firmly believes the person was good and feels a strong desire to repay them. Hearing such conviction, the director seems to finally understand, acknowledging that he gets it now. With the conversation concluded, the director announces that he'll be taking his leave, and Yoon Sung quietly agrees. Now alone, the director is left to ponder everything he just heard. He mulls over the existence of a hunter who so easily dispatched the golem that An Yoon Sung's team couldn't even scratch. The thought of such a powerful hunter also possessing such strong integrity truly intrigues him. He finds himself wishing he could meet this person. At that moment, the scene shifts back to our main character at home, who lets out a surprised sound while looking at his phone. His eyes sparkle with amazement, a stunning realization dawning on him. The people of Earth are practically gods. After accidentally unlocking his smartphone, he's been completely captivated, staying up the entire night absorbed in the device. He marvels at the fact that information is freely accessible, even to those who aren't part of a privileged class. To him, this place feels like heaven. Thanks to this incredible freedom, he has already gathered a significant amount of information about this new world. He starts to piece things together. His first key discovery is that the gate he entered was not, in fact, private property. Second, he learns that each gate has different entry restrictions. Since Korea thoroughly manages its awakeners, entering any gate requires getting approval beforehand. The body that grants this approval is the Korea Hunter Association, often shortened to Hunhyeop. This leads him to his third conclusion. An Yoon Sung wasn't a petty thief trying to rob an owned gate. This revelation completely changes his understanding of the man he encountered. He decides to put those complex thoughts on hold, at least for the time being. With a new sense of purpose, he determines that his first priority must be to get a hunter's license. Sometime later, he finds himself among a group of aspiring hunters as a female officer concludes their theoretical safety training. She instructs everyone to wait a moment, as they will be distributing devices shortly. He finds the entire session rather boring. Another person nearby seems to agree, summing up the whole lecture as a simple warning not to act recklessly in front of monsters. A male officer begins handing out the equipment, but when a device is placed in his hands, he can only stare at it in complete confusion. He has to ask what the object is, which elicits a surprised reaction from the officer, who seems shocked that he wouldn't know. As he looks around, he notices others are pointing him out, wondering in disbelief about the item he's holding. The whispers escalate into open mockery, with people sarcastically asking if he'd been living in the mountains or had just arrived from another planet. He can't help but think that he's made it painfully obvious he's an outsider in this world. While he's examining the device, the officer kindly clarifies that it's a basic analyzer. He explains that it uses a technology called pixie glass and offers to demonstrate how to use it. Just then, a female officer checks if everyone has received their analyzers. As a butterfly monster appears, she instructs the group to use the device's lens to scan the creature. Our hero seems a bit hesitant, questioning if he's really supposed to point the device at that monster. Following the instructions, he aims the analyzer, which quickly identifies the creature as a grade F poison butterfly. He finds it interesting, musing to himself how people on Earth rely on tools like this to identify their enemies. The male officer then adds another piece of information. The analyzers can also function as item scanners. The mention of items immediately catches our hero's attention. The officer encourages them to try it out, explaining that the function can help them find useful resources in the area. Curious, our hero decides to test it on the officer, but the system finds no data. He figures it probably doesn't work on people. He then aims the analyzer at a peculiar plant, and it immediately identifies the object as a heat fruit, a species with distinct red fibers. Understanding now how the item identification works, a new idea sparks in his mind. He thinks that if it can recognize this plant, it should be able to recognize something else he possesses. He decides to test his new idea on the ground, but the system returns an error, unable to find any data. This unexpected result leaves him confused. He questions why it failed, recalling that the system's purpose is to categorize useful resources. Surely, the very Earth should count for something. Then, a sudden realization dawns on him. A new theory forms in his mind as he wonders if the system's detection is limited only to things that contain mana. That seems to be the answer. The ability distinguishes between valuable and worthless items based entirely on the presence of mana within them. He acknowledges that while this is a convenient feature, it's also a very imprecise and limited method for assessing true value. Scooping up a handful of soil, he reflects on the fact that there are many useful things in the world that don't contain any mana at all. This very soil is a prime example of the system's flaw. To the naked eye, it just looks like ordinary dirt, completely unremarkable. However, he knows its hidden potential, thinking of a rare spell called Absorption Magic, which possesses the unique ability to absorb mana. What he finds truly strange is that no one in this world seems to be aware of this magic. He believes that if their magical studies were even slightly developed, a fundamental spell like absorption magic would surely be recognized. He just can't wrap his head around it, wondering why on earth no one seems to know about this kind of magic. But then, a sudden thought hits him, a potential explanation beginning to dawn on him. Seeking confirmation, he approaches a nearby officer and politely asks if he can pose a question, and the officer kindly agrees. He asks if the officer happens to know when magic, or rather, when awakeners as they're called here, first started appearing in Korea. The officer answers without hesitation, stating that it was 7 years ago. He elaborates that this was due to the Dungeon Shock, an event that caused awakeners to appear all over the world at the very same time. Our hero is visibly shocked by this revelation. Only 7 years? It seems impossible. The number just doesn't compute for him. He reflects on how the history of magic in his own world, Alpha World, spans more than 60,000 years. A sense of pity washes over him as he covers his mouth. He's finally understood. All this time, he's been living among people who are, in the grand scheme of magic, practically primitive. Suddenly, it all made sense. He realized that the odd electrical properties of all the tools were a direct result of their limited magical understanding. This world presented a bizarre paradox. Their magical knowledge was incredibly primitive, yet it was paired with an enormous level of technological prowess. He couldn't help but marvel at how their evolution had taken such an abnormal path. To him, it wasn't just strange, it was completely fascinating. Pushing aside his grand observations for the moment, he decided it was time to get to work and squatted down. He began gathering the dark soil, his mind already turning to his next move. A critical thought emerged as he worked. He wondered if he could use his absorption magic freely here, completely undetected by anyone. He mused on the hunter profession, a field where one could supposedly rake in hundreds of millions with enough determination. But he knew the reality was far from the fantasy portrayed in the media. For lower-tier hunters, life was no different from hell. To make matters worse, the body he inhabited had an issue with one of its legs, and he was completely unable to use magic. Faced with this grim reality, he knew he had to find another way to earn money before his funds ran out and he starved to death again. For the time being, his only advantage was the significant amount of mana he had managed to gather using his absorption magic. His research suggested there were monsters on Earth he could kill with this power, but the problem was they only inhabited C-rank gates. Unfortunately, his official classification was F-rank, which meant that according to regulations, he wasn't even allowed to enter those gates. Using his absorption magic felt awkward without a deeper understanding of Earth, and the fact his chosen body was a powerless F-rank only added to his mounting list of problems. Just as he was lost in thought, a sudden beeping from his phone startled him. It was an emergency disaster message warning of a dungeon break and a B-rank monster. The alert urged evacuation, but the terms were completely alien to him. His confusion quickly melted into a sinister smile. Evacuate? The idea seemed almost amusing. As he started to suit up, he ironically questioned what evacuate even meant. For him, this wasn't a threat. Instead of fleeing, he immediately departed, heading straight into the heart of the danger zone. It was an opportunity, driven by a powerful desire to see this strange new world's phenomena for himself. Arriving on site, he found a scene of pure chaos. Panicked bystanders were screaming about the dungeon break as they desperately tried to escape. Unfazed, he simply marveled at the creature's immense size, realizing this had to be the B-rank monster from the alert. He stood calmly within the fleeing crowd, a stark contrast to the terror around him as he carefully observed the situation. High above the city, the massive beast was perched atop a huge tower, a terrifying spectacle for everyone else. Down on the streets, our hero was already on the move, pushing his way through the frozen crowd and asking people to let him pass. His urgency wasn't appreciated, however, as some bystanders grumbled about him causing a scene and blocking the path. One man in particular took offense, getting in his face and aggressively questioning his expression, asking if he was looking for a fight. The MC was taken aback by the hostility, explaining that he wasn't trying to cause trouble and was just looking at the creature like everyone else. The bystander scoffed, proudly declaring himself a hunter there for professional research, not some ordinary person hoping for an awakening near a monster. Coolly, the MC revealed that he was also a hunter, present for the exact same purpose. Surprised, the man demanded to know his rank. The MC answered plainly, stating that he was an F-rank hunter. Upon hearing this, the so-called research hunters couldn't hold back a condescending laugh. The blatant mockery wasn't lost on the MC, who looked on as the man laughed, confirming the insult. Deciding the man wasn't worth his time, he shifted his focus back to the real problem towering over the city. The monster was now being circled by a swarm of helicopters, a sign that the official response was finally beginning. On the ground, soldiers unleashed a barrage of gunfire, but their efforts seemed futile. One of them shouted in alarm, realizing the monster was ignoring their assault and heading directly toward the civilians, urging his comrades to shoot faster. Completely unfazed, the creature retaliated against the aerial threat, whipping its massive tail with incredible speed toward one of the helicopters. The impact was devastating, shattering the aircraft in a fiery explosion. The wreckage of the helicopter plummeted from the sky, a grim signal of the military's inability to handle the threat. Just then, another helicopter swooped in. A voice over the radio announced that the support hunters had finally arrived on the scene, and from the open door, Yoon appeared, ready for battle. Meanwhile, the monster had shifted its focus to the terrified civilians trapped inside a nearby tower, its intentions terrifyingly clear. In a flash, its grotesque tongue shot out, wrapping around a few helpless people huddled by the windows. With a brutal tug, it yanked them from the building, pulling them out into the open air. But just as the monster was about to devour the helpless people it had captured, a hunter appeared in a flash, slicing clean through the creature's massive tongue. The monster roared in agony, its grip failing, which allowed the civilians to fall free. Observing the chaos from a distance, Yoon Sung carefully tracked the monster's movements. He realized with a start that the wounded beast was trying to escape by running under the tower. At that very moment, an archer high above in a helicopter began gathering a potent amount of mana into the tip of her arrow. Taking aim, she released the shot, sending the devastatingly powerful arrow flying directly at the monster. But in a desperate last-ditch effort, the monster severs its own tail to escape the full force of the blast. Yoon Sung watches in frustration, realizing the creature is sacrificing a part of itself just to flee. Just as he thought, the wounded monster immediately begins its descent, scrambling down the tower to get away. But they weren't about to let it go that easily. Refusing to let it escape, Yoon Sung leaps from the tower, activating his shield and diving directly toward the fleeing beast. He closes the distance in an instant, striking the monster with incredible force. Not giving it a single moment to recover, he immediately channels his power once more. He follows up with a devastating punch, sending the monster plummeting down toward the ground below. Not leaving anything to chance, Yoon descends swiftly after the fallen creature, determined to end the fight for good. He lands with devastating force, completely crushing the monster to ensure it poses no further threat. As the dust from the impact finally settles, the monstrous threat lies completely still, its life extinguished. Standing over his defeated foe, Yoon lets out a quiet sigh, the tension of the battle finally leaving him. From a safe distance, the onlookers are in absolute awe, buzzing with disbelief that the creature was actually caught. They realize with certainty that these incredible individuals must be professional hunters. The crowd's excitement grows as they spot him heading their way, with some even eagerly wondering if they could get his autograph. Observing, the MC reflects on his recent experiences, realizing he's learned something important from these past searches. He thinks about how A-rank hunters are the elite, making up the top 3% of all awakeners. They're not just powerful protectors of the city, they're seen as idols by the people. It suddenly clicks why the crowd is going wild. They're ecstatically shouting the name An Yoon Gyun, thrilled to see someone in person they've only ever watched on TV. The hunter, Yoon Sung, approaches with a friendly greeting. He walks right up to our hero and warmly shakes his hand. Yoon's face is beaming with surprise and relief. He expresses how unexpected it is to see him here, sincerely telling him that he owes him his life for what happened before. To clarify, Yoon reminds him that he was the person he helped back at the gate. Our hero confirms that he remembers him. He thinks to himself that it's no wonder Yoon's face seems so familiar. Yoon then turns his attention to the others, asking if he is part of their group. But then, his expression shifts into a menacing glare as he looks at the research hunter, mentioning that he noticed him watching them earlier. The research hunter is visibly shaken by the sudden intimidation, stammering a nervous reply as our hero silently observes the tense exchange. Breaking the tense silence, the other hunter decides to make a formal introduction, stating that his name is An Yoon Seong. He then politely asks for our hero's name, if it wouldn't be too much trouble. Our guy responds curtly, identifying himself as Kim Kiryeo. The name immediately sparks recognition in Yoon Sung, who seems surprised to finally meet him. Now knowing exactly who he's dealing with, Yoon Sung quickly asks if Kim Kiryeo has some time to spare. He clarifies that he has something specific he'd like to talk about with him, adding a bit of mystery to his request. After they've had a moment to settle in, Kiryeo cuts to the chase, asking Yoon Sung if he's truly serious about wanting to repay the favor. Sitting across from him, Yoon Sung earnestly explains that while Kiryu might not be inclined to accept, he has to ask if there's any way he can possibly help. He confesses that he's felt a constant sense of unease ever since Kiryu disappeared, especially since the man saved his life. Kiryu downplays the past, clarifying that back then he was simply running away, terrified of getting caught by the police. Still, he acknowledges that there's nothing wrong with a powerful A-class hunter wanting to return a favor. He then reveals that there actually is something he could use help with. At these words, Yoon Sung's face brightens and he immediately insists that Kiryu can just leave it to him. Taking him up on the offer, Kiryu pulls out a map, ready to explain his plan. He finally states his request, asking if Yoon Sung would be willing to accompany him to a gate for a little while. They step inside the gate, finding themselves in a gloomy and dark area, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Kiryu notices the worried expression Yoon Sung has been wearing and asks him what's wrong. Flustered, Yoon Sung quickly insists that it's nothing. Accepting his answer for the moment, Kiryu suggests they pick up the pace a bit, and Yoon Sung readily agrees. But as they move deeper, Yoon Sung's mind is racing. He finds the entire situation unbelievable, no matter how he looks at it. He couldn't understand why an amazing hunter like Kiryu would bring him along. His thoughts drift back to just a moment ago, when he had told Kiryu it was an honor to be with him, asking if he was there to gather materials. Kiryu had simply replied that he was there to hunt monsters, which only made Yoon Sung more excited, declaring he would learn a lot by watching. A heavy silence falls as Kiryu seems to consider Yoon Sung's enthusiastic assumptions. He finally speaks, telling Yoon Sung he needs to clarify something, as it seems he is under a serious misunderstanding. Kiryu then plainly states that he is an F-class hunter, a revelation that leaves Yoon Sung utterly stunned and confused. While Yoon Sung stares at the hunter ID in shock, Kiryu calmly expresses his hope that he can be hired as a porter. Back in the present, Yoon Sung's mind races. He tells himself there's no way Kiryu could really be an F-class and wonders if the measuring device was broken. A thought suddenly strikes him as he remembers hearing about something similar before. He recalls the rumors that some mid-level and higher awakened individuals manipulate their awakening levels to avoid being forcibly mobilized by the association during dungeon breaks. Yoon Sung speculates that this must be the reason Kiryu is hiding his true power level. His train of thought is cut short when Kiryu announces that he's found their destination. Before them is a cavern engulfed in fire, filled with bat-like monsters. Kiryu remarks that it looks exactly like what he saw on the internet. Yoon Sung identifies the creatures as flame spitters, prompting Kiryu to question the strange-sounding name. Yoon Sung explains the name came from a translation error in Korea's analyzer. The monster, originally from Ohio, was supposed to be registered as firebat since it's a bat engulfed in flames, but the glitch resulted in the strange flame spitter's name. Kiryu seems genuinely impressed, remarking on how much Yoon Sung knows. But their conversation is abruptly cut short as one of the bats lets out a horrifying, screeching cry. Responding to the signal, the entire swarm of fiery bats descends upon the two hunters. They quickly find themselves trapped as the creatures begin to circle them, creating a terrifying vortex of fire and wings. Amid the chaos, Yoon Sung's attention is drawn to Kiryu, who calmly reaches into his pocket for something. Even in this tense situation, Yoon Sung's curiosity gets the better of him, and he asks Kiryu what he's been carrying in that bag all this time. Kiryu glances down, casually acknowledging the bag Yoon Sung is asking about. Suddenly, their conversation is cut short as a massive swarm of bats descends, attacking them in a furious crowd. In a swift motion, Kiryu provides the answer, scattering the mysterious soil from his bag directly at the attacking bats. The strange soil immediately clings to the creatures, blanketing them completely. The effect is instantaneous as the bats begin to scream in what sounds like pure agony. As the bats start to disintegrate into dust, Kiryu calmly explains that the soil is an item meant to be used for exactly these kinds of situations. He adds with confidence that its performance is guaranteed, leaving Yoon Sung completely speechless at the sight. Yoon Sung breaks the silence, hesitantly apologizing for asking questions during a hunt. Kiryu reassures him that it's okay and encourages him to speak his mind. Getting to the heart of his confusion, Yoon Sung asks why Kiryu insists on using items when he's clearly strong enough to defeat C-class monsters with his bare hands. Kiryu can't help but wonder to himself if this guy even bothered to read his hunter license properly. He considers that maybe someone at the top of the hunter pyramid is just ignorant about the reality for low-level awakened individuals. In any case, he decides there's no need to reveal any of his own weaknesses. Instead of a direct answer, Kiryu poses a question of his own, asking Yoon Sung if he's ever truly thought about the nature of being an awakened hunter like this. Kiryu continues, musing on how convenient their powers are. Things like lifting a 1-ton truck or instantly filling a plot of land with water. But there's a deeper, more unsettling truth to these amazing skills. He points out that they never earned these abilities through hard work. They simply appeared out of nowhere one day. This is what makes Kiryu so uncomfortable with his power. He reasons that if it appeared for no reason, it could just as easily vanish without warning. Because of this deep-seated uncertainty, he explains, he chooses not to rely on his awakened abilities. Internally, Kiryu can only hope that Yoon Sung will believe this nonsense he's just spun. Yoon Sung pauses, carefully considering everything Kiryu has just said. Suddenly, it clicks. Yoon Sung is completely floored, wondering why he never saw it that way. He realizes Kiryo is right, things gained easily can be lost just as easily, and it was foolish to assume his powers would last a lifetime. Kiryo is stunned himself, thinking that his on-the-spot excuse actually makes a lot of sense. Building on the idea, Yoon Sung notes that with gate mutations becoming more unpredictable, this training could prepare them for a future where their skills might not even work inside dungeons. He looks at Kiryo with immense admiration, praising his foresight while admitting he was just looking for an easy path. All Kiryo can do is awkwardly play along. Suddenly, Yoon Sung stops, a look of realization dawning on his face. He covers his mouth and asks if a certain something could be the reason for all this, leaving a bewildered Kiryo to wonder what on earth he's talking about. Yoon Sung explains his theory, mentioning that individuals with high awakening levels can instinctively sense power from others. He compares it to the feeling of getting goosebumps when you're near an S-class hunter. He then sheepishly admits to Kiryo that while he did sense something, he dismissed it as insignificant, like the buzzing of a fly. This unexpected comparison leaves Kiryo completely stunned. Kiryo is internally outraged. He can't believe this man just compared Alfori's greatest magician to a mere insect. Oblivious to Kiryo's inner turmoil, Yoon Sung continues to marvel at his abilities. He wonders if training allows one to hide their mana, admitting he has never witnessed such precise control before. Kiryo resigns himself to just tolerating this primitive man. He realizes that awakening levels in this world are simply another term for mana quantity, a discovery that brings him no joy whatsoever. Deciding it's easier to just go along with it, Kiryo gives a vague confirmation, agreeing that Yoon Sung's assessment is roughly correct. Later, while they're eating, Yoon Sung eagerly asks Kiryo to call him if he ever plans to do something similar again. Kiryo is confused by the request, reminding the hunter that his debt is already paid in full. Yoon Sung earnestly explains that there's so much he could learn just by being around Kiryo. He opens up, revealing that his team disbanded after an accident and that he's still a rookie, having only awakened less than 6 months ago. He admits that because of his inexperience, it's dangerous for him to operate alone. But when it comes to forming a new team, he just laughs it off, hinting that it's a complicated issue for him. Listening to him, Kiryo understands completely. He silently figures that Yoon Sung must still be hurting from being betrayed by a comrade, and thinks to himself that he would feel the exact same way. So, Kiryo relents, telling Yoon Sung he wouldn't refuse his help if it's offered. However, he gives a stern warning. Yoon Sung shouldn't expect to be rescued if a dangerous situation arises. He emphasizes that Yoon Sung must always protect himself, claiming he doesn't have the ability to protect anyone else. Kiryo even downplays his own strength, insisting he's so weak that fighting together would only cause him to lose. Referring to the Golem incident, Kiryo simply says the only problem was that Yoon Sung had been a bit too hasty. Hearing this, Yoon Sung is amazed, thinking to himself that Kiryo is being incredibly modest. As their conversation continues, Yoon Sung seems to understand Kiryo's concern, asking if he's just worried he'll get hurt by letting his guard down. Then, shifting gears, he asks Kiryo how old he is. Kiryo seems a little surprised by the personal question, but Yoon Sung eagerly confirms that he really wants to know. Yoon Sung explains that for reference, he's 22 years old, but his graduation timeline is a bit unusual because he had a second chance. This prompts a sudden, jarring thought for Kiryo, who stops to wonder about his own identity and just how old he, Kim Kiryo, really is. Pushing the strange thought aside for a moment, Kiryo takes out his wallet, almost forgetting that they should probably exchange phone numbers. To show his age, Kiryo presents his ID to Yoon Sung, who looks at it with surprise, asking if he's really 24 years old. Yoon Sung seems to be processing this, realizing there's only a 2-year age difference between them. Kiryo confirms that he is indeed 24. Yoon Sung quickly clarifies that he didn't mean anything by his surprise, it's just that Kiryo seems so remarkably calm and mature. As he looks at some young people nearby, a somber thought crosses Kiryo's mind. He has no memories of ever being in college. This unsettling realization is followed by another, the memory of his phone's contact list being completely empty. The missing pieces of his past lead him to a profound and troubling question about his own identity. Who on earth is Kim Kiryo? He finds himself grappling with the void, wondering what kind of life he could have possibly lived to end up with so many unanswered questions. Meanwhile, in another location, a person lies down, tuning into a news broadcast. The report highlights a disturbing trend. The phenomenon of gate mutations is increasing all over the country. The television anchor explains that the Hunter Association has officially stated they haven't been able to figure out why this is happening. The report continues, emphasizing that even the most elite, high-ranking assessors are baffled and have failed to determine the exact cause of this strange phenomenon. As a result of this widespread uncertainty, the broadcast concludes, a growing sense of concern is spreading among the citizens. Meanwhile, our hero's attention was focused elsewhere, on a new opportunity. He recalled a message from An Yoon Sung the day before, an exciting invitation to see something cool with priority access to a newly discovered gate. Of course, he had immediately agreed. An offer to see something so unique was impossible to resist, and the anticipation was already building. He knew the standard procedure in Korea. When a new gate emerges, access is restricted while an investigation team goes in first. Only after they complete their work is the gate opened, and today marked that very occasion. Standing before the gate, he held on to a rumor he'd heard about an unfamiliar plant discovered inside. He couldn't help but wonder if this unknown flora might just be the key to restoring his magic. He decided his plan would be simple and cautious. He just needed to check out the plant near the entrance and then leave immediately. Arriving at the location, he was surprised by the huge crowd that had gathered, wondering if all these people were actually planning on going inside. Yoon-sung reasoned that most of them were probably just spectators and journalists, though he admitted that there were still more people than he had expected, causing our hero to ponder the situation. Just then, the low growl of a supercar cut through the chatter, drawing everyone's attention as it pulled up to the scene. Our hero turned, his curiosity piqued by the sudden and flashy arrival. The vehicle came to an abrupt and dramatic stop right in front of the gathered crowd. With a smooth motion, the car door swung open, building the anticipation. A man with striking blue hair emerged, his presence immediately commanding the area. A murmur spread through the onlookers as they recognized the newcomer, questioning amongst themselves why the famous Kang Chang-ho would show up here. Our hero, unfamiliar with this world's celebrities, had to ask who the man was. Yoon-sung, in disbelief, explained that this was Hunter Kang Chang-ho, an S-rank hunter and one of only 3 to hold that title in all of Korea. With this new information, our hero focused his gaze on Kang Chang-ho, truly sizing him up for the first time. He could immediately sense the man's power, noting internally that his mana was remarkably stable. By Earth standards, this hunter was definitely a rare and formidable talent. Just as he finished his assessment, the powerful hunter, Kang Chang-ho, noticed him. Their eyes locked, and an unspoken tension immediately filled the air between them. Leaning in, Yoon-sung whispered to Kiryo, pointing out the man's unusual eyes. He explained that he'd heard they were called dragon eyes, which were apparently an extremely rare and valuable item. Suddenly, Kang Chang-ho began walking straight towards them, causing Yoon-sung to wonder with a hint of panic why he was approaching. Stopping directly in front of Kiryo, Kang Chang-ho bluntly demanded his name, leaving Kiryo momentarily speechless. When he didn't answer right away, Kang Chang-ho repeated his demand. Kiryo calmly gave his name, Kim Ki-ryo. Unsatisfied, Kang Chang-ho pressed on, asking for his hunter rank. Yoon-sung, trying to intervene, politely greeted the high-ranking hunter and explained that Kiryo was just a porter assisting him, asking if there was some kind of problem. Kang Chang-ho cut him off with a cold stare, making it clear that he had no interest in speaking with Yoon-sung. With the attention back on him, Kiryo quietly stated his official classification. He was an F rank. Kang Chang-ho eyed him with suspicion, openly questioning if what Kiryo claimed was actually the truth. Kiryo immediately understood. The S-rank hunter must have sensed the latent mana hidden deep within his body. He knew that, fundamentally, mana was just an organ meant for power output. Refining one's control didn't decrease the total amount of mana available, and a sorcerer as skilled as Kang Chang-ho could likely sense a person's potential from even the slightest hint. Unfazed by the scrutiny, Kiryo offered to show his hunter ID as proof if the man still didn't believe him. Kang Chang-ho was inwardly stunned, finding it hard to accept that someone who could meet the gaze of an S-rank hunter without flinching was truly just an F-rank. Just as Kang Chang-ho was about to speak again, Yoon-sung suddenly interrupted, anxiously telling Kiryo it was time to go, which left him baffled. Yoon-sung insisted they had only come for a quick look and would be late for an appointment. Kiryo was confused, as their plan had been to explore the area, but Yoon frantically urged him to leave with him. As Yoon-sung practically dragged Kiryo away, Kang Chang-ho stood silently, his gaze following them as they left. Once they were at a safe distance, Yoon-sung expressed his shock, asking how Kiryo could possibly not know who Hunter Kang Chang-ho was. Kiryo simply replied that he had been away for a while. Yoon-sung, hesitant to gossip, admitted that Hunter Kang Chang-ho doesn't have the best reputation. This immediately caught Kiryo's interest, who asked him to explain why. He explained that Kang Chang-ho has a criminal record for assault, making other hunters avoid entering gates with him. Even worse, Yoon-sung added, the recent rumors surrounding him were just as troubling as his past. Kiryo pressed for more details about what had happened recently. Yoon-sung began to share a personal story, mentioning his cousin Choi Jin, who is the 3rd highest ranked A-rank hunter. He recounted how his cousin had entered the same gate as Kang Chang-ho and was suddenly attacked by him. It seems, Yoon-sung added, that Kang Chang-ho has a habit of picking fights only with other strong awakeners. Kiryo suddenly understood. He realized Yoon-sung had rushed him away out of fear that the unpredictable S-ranker would try to mess with him. He was inwardly amused and touched, thinking of Yoon-sung as a thoughtful little mammal. With that settled, Kiryo decided they should head back for the day. He suggested they could always come back to check on the mysterious plant later, but just as they were turning to leave, Kiryo paused, another thought suddenly occurring to him. He turned back to Yoon-sung, needing to confirm something he'd said earlier. He asked if it was true that Kang Chang-ho's eyes were some kind of dragon's eyes item. Following up on his thought, he asked if that meant the dragon's eyes were a tradable item, much like the shield he himself uses. Yoon-sung confirmed that it was. He explained that when Kang Chang-ho first acquired the item, it was in the form of a small orb, which he likely swallowed to activate its power. This sparked an idea for the main character, who then asked if Yoon Shung had access to something like a dragon's lungs. Intrigued, Yoon Shung said he would check. Pulling out his phone, Yoon Shung searched through his records. He found only past transactions, with nothing currently for sale, but noted that since the lungs aren't very popular, they might show up eventually. This made the main character curious, so he asked why they weren't in demand and what their price was. Yoon Shung explained that unlike the eyes or heart, the lungs don't boost a user's mana. While the liver can be used for medicine, the lungs are thought to have no real effect. As he was speaking, he found a listing and remarked that the price was actually decent. He stated the price was 2.6 billion won. The main character could only repeat the astronomical number in disbelief. His face fell as he stammered, needing to confirm if he really heard billion. To his shock, Yoon Sung casually called the price cheap, pointing out that you couldn't buy other dragon parts no matter how much you were willing to pay. Completely overwhelmed by the cost, the main character was filled with instant regret, wishing he had never even asked in the first place. After some time in a taxi, the MC, still troubled by their earlier conversation, the main character pulled out his phone and began looking up information on Kang Chang-ho. As he scrolled through the information, a deep sense of dread settled in. The more he learned about Kang Chang-ho, the more frightening the man became, and he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that someone so dangerous was allowed to walk free. He started to panic, wondering if he should have avoided making eye contact back then. A terrifying thought crossed his mind. What if Kang Chang-ho decided to mess with him too? Was this how his life was going to end? As if summoned by his worst fears, Kang Chang-ho's supercar appeared at that very moment, driving right behind their taxi. Without any warning, the supercar violently rammed into the back of the taxi. The main character was thrown forward, his mind reeling in pure shock and disbelief at what was happening. The taxi spun out of control from the impact, swerving wildly across the road. Its chaotic trajectory ended abruptly as the car crashed hard into a wall. Thankfully, despite the violent crash, both the driver and the main character were left uninjured. Shaken but alert, the taxi driver immediately turned to his passenger, anxiously checking to see if he was okay. The passenger confirmed he was okay, and with that, the driver's concern instantly erupted into pure rage as he stormed out of the taxi. He immediately started yelling at the supercar that had hit them, furiously questioning the driver's competence and demanding they get a move on. Just then, Kang Chang-ho stepped out from the luxury car, immediately offering a sincere apology for the accident. He explained with an awkward smile that it had been a while since he'd last driven, causing him to mix up the accelerator and the brake. Our hero's eyes widened in shock as he recognized the famous face of Kang Chang-ho standing right in front of him. It seemed the recognition was mutual, as Kang Chang-ho greeted him by name, calling him Kim Kir-yo, the F-rank hunter, and politely asked for his contact information to settle the matter. Kir-yo silently wondered how anyone could be unskilled enough to crash on such a quiet road. Meanwhile, the taxi driver, now trembling after realizing who he was dealing with, stammered that Hunter Kang Chang-ho would need to cover the repair costs. In response, Kang Chang-ho simply held out a thick wad of cash, telling the driver to take it. Kir-yo couldn't help but wonder how much money was in that stack, as the driver bowed deeply, thanking Kang Chang-ho over and over again. Turning his attention back to a very confused Kir-yo, Kang Chang-ho asked for his contact information again. He explained that since he'd just given away all his cash, they would need to handle the medical expenses at a slower pace. Though Kir-yo was a bit lost, he figured this must be how traffic accidents are typically handled. Deciding there was no harm in just sharing a phone number, he gave Kang Chang-ho his contact information. The man's name, Kang Chang-ho, echoed in Kir-yo's mind as he recalled the man's notorious reputation. Originally the only son of a prominent company owner, he was born into immense wealth and became a hunter, only to end up with a record for aggravated assault. It was expected that his family's money would get him off the hook, but shockingly, he was sentenced to prison. The internet was filled with testimonies about Kang Chang-ho's abusive tendencies. However, a much larger tragedy overshadowed his past. His parents had died during a dungeon break a few years ago. Right after the incident, Kang Chang-ho sold all the shares he inherited, effectively liquidating his family's entire business empire. Using the vague timing of his awakening as a hunter, people began to whisper that his assault had been committed for financial gain. Kir-yo knew, however, that these rumors were never actually proven. Interrupting his thoughts, Kang Chang-ho asked if he was heading off to take care of that chick again, expressing surprise that someone like him was working as a porter. He then dangled an intriguing offer, mentioning that he knew of jobs that paid much better than what a porter earns. Leaning in closer, Kang Chang-ho asked him directly if he was interested in hearing about these opportunities. Kang Chang-ho elaborated on his proposition, asking him if he was interested in a job that offered a much better salary. Visibly excited, the prospect of a well-paying job immediately piqued his interest. After all, he thought, it wouldn't hurt just to listen to the offer. Kang Chang-ho then laid out his terms. He wanted him to stop working as An Yoon Shung's porter and come work for him instead. In return, he promised an astonishing 80% of all items and profits they would earn from clearing gates. The offer was so generous, it was hard to believe. He couldn't help but wonder if this man was truly trying to scout him with such ridiculously favorable conditions. A realization dawned on him. This S-rank hunter must have recognized the incredible potential hidden within Kim Kir-yo's body. He began to wonder if his own magic was actually on par with, or perhaps even greater than, an S-rank's. The thought filled him with a powerful sense of ambition. If he could just learn to properly harness this magic, he believed the entire planet could be his to control. However, bringing himself back to the present, he voiced his concerns. He explained to Kang Chang-ho that his current situation made it difficult for him to enter S-rank gates, so he wasn't sure if working together would even be possible. Kang Chang-ho looked completely baffled, questioning why he was even talking about S-rank gates and assuring him no one would push a hunter of his level into such a high-risk environment. This confused response led the young man to ask directly if he had been approached because of his awakening potential. The term awakening potential seemed to confuse Kang Chang-ho even more. He simply stated that the young man was just an F-rank hunter, wasn't he? He then clarified his proposal, explaining that his offer was to train him directly. In other words, Kang Chang-ho was offering to become his personal sponsor. A wave of embarrassment washed over him. He realized he'd gotten completely confused and said something strange, feeling incredibly foolish. Kang Chang-ho took this as a potential yes and asked if he could consider the proposal accepted. But our hero paused him, needing an answer first. He had to know what Kang Chang-ho saw in him to make such a significant offer. The question hung in the air, creating a tense silence between the two. In response, Kang Chang-ho simply offered a confident, knowing smirk. The scene then shifts, and our hero seems to be explaining the situation to someone else, starting hesitantly. We find ourselves at a place called the Gold Smell, where another hunter, Yoon Shung, reacts with shock to some terrible news. He can't believe that Kang Chang-ho has been in a car accident. Our hero explains to Yoon Sung that he had used him as an excuse, saying he had plans with him to quickly get away from someone else. As he thinks about it, a dark suspicion forms. He wonders if that person might have caused the accident on purpose. Yoon Sung's eyes widen in realization. The rumors about someone targeting strong hunters were true after all. He expresses his relief, believing he avoided trouble thanks to our hero. The thought that even an A-rank hunter like himself could have been a target sends a shiver down his spine, a fact our hero quietly takes in. Yoon Sung continues, explaining that with a hunter as formidable as Kiryo around, he wouldn't draw any unwanted attention. He reasons that if someone like Kang Chang-ho is capable of such things, then Kiryo's power must be on an entirely different level. Meanwhile, Kiryo's mind is racing, trying to figure out his next move. He imagines storming into a police station, but he's stumped on what he could possibly say. He pictures himself trying to explain that an S-rank hunter offered to protect him and give him items, only to be met with a silent, disbelieving stare from an officer. He quickly dismisses the idea as useless, knowing no one would ever take such a wild story seriously. Just as his thoughts spiral, Yoon Sung changes the subject, casually asking if Kiryo happened to catch the news that morning. Without waiting for an answer, Yoon Sung brings up a news report stating that Korea had ranked second in the world for its gate management excellence evaluations last year. He adds that despite the ongoing issue of abnormal mutations, civilian casualties have been drastically reduced. The news was so optimistic, it even suggested humanity was on the verge of conquering the disaster known as the Gate. Kiryo can't help but marvel at Yoon Sung's talent for picking the most random topics. But the mention of the Gate resonates deeply with Kiryo, as he sees the concept as a perfect, small-scale reflection of his own otherworldly experiences. His mind flashes back to 2017, the year it all began. A mysterious phenomenon, the Gates, appeared simultaneously all across the globe, bringing with them hordes of terrifying monsters. And in the wake of this chaos, a new kind of human emerged to fight back, the Awakened. Kiryo reflects on the principles behind it all. He knows that magic is fueled by mana drawn from a planet's core. However, he finds it odd, considering that Earth's rocky composition should have made it difficult for mana to rise, a stark contrast to his home world of Alphauri. He pieces it together. The Gate phenomenon that emerged 7 years ago must be acting like a cosmic well, drawing mana to the surface. This explains how some humans became awakened. Still, there's so little understanding of these gates, which swarm with terrifying creatures and clearly weren't created by Earth's inhabitants. The technology is utterly alien, belonging neither to his advanced homeworld of Alphauri nor to Earth. This leaves him with a chilling, unanswered question: what, or who, is truly behind them? Lost in his own complex theories, Kiryo mutters aloud that he doesn't understand. His contemplation is suddenly interrupted by Yoon Shung, who calls out to him, trying to get his attention. Yoon Shung, looking concerned, asks if he's feeling unwell. Kiryo quickly snaps back to reality, apologizing and explaining that he was just lost in thought for a moment. Curious, Yoon Sung gently presses him, asking what could have possibly been so absorbing. Kiryo shares his strange thought experiment, explaining that he was trying to imagine the situation from the perspective of the Gate's creator. From that viewpoint, he muses, the current state of affairs would be quite unsatisfactory. Intrigued, Yoon Sung asks him to explain why. He begins to lay out a dark analogy. Regardless of the creator's intent, the monsters inside the gates are designed to kill humans, and the valuable items they find are nothing more than cheese laid out on a deadly trap. He continues the thought, posing a critical question. What would happen if the little rats' humanity figured out a way to eat only the cheese, avoiding the trap altogether? Finishing his point, he wonders aloud if the creator of such a system wouldn't become furious at being outsmarted. Yoon-soon considers this, admitting that it could very well be true. At that exact moment, the MC is struck by a sudden, jarring sensation, reacting with silent shock. He immediately questions what he's feeling, sensing a powerful energy bubbling up from beneath his feet. Completely unaware of the surging energy, Yoon-sung notices his friend's strange reaction and worriedly asks what's wrong. It takes only a second for the MC to identify the feeling. It's an overwhelming wave of pure mana. As the mana begins to swirl and surround him, he urgently shouts An Yoon-sung's name, sensing imminent danger. Yoon-sung is left utterly bewildered, staring at the impossible sight and wondering what on earth is happening. The mana then erupts, completely engulfing the MC in a violent, spinning tornado of energy. Yoon-sung can only watch, whispering his friend's title in horror. With a frustrated curse, the MC feels himself being pulled into the vortex, completely powerless to stop it. His last thought before everything changes is the simple realization that he's been completely pulled in. A moment later, his consciousness returns, and he opens his eyes. He finds himself in an entirely new place and immediately begins to assess his unfamiliar surroundings. Before him stretches a stark, completely empty white hallway. As he walks cautiously down the corridor, he can't help but wonder what this place is and if he is truly still inside the gate. He understands that facing monsters in a dead end like this would be the worst possible situation. Knowing he needs to keep moving, he's painfully aware that his body is too weak to cast even a single fire spell. Overwhelmed by his weakness, he feels a wave of despair, wondering how he could possibly survive this. But then, something catches his attention, momentarily piercing through his hopelessness. He finds himself in an unfamiliar place, standing before a huge gate with a mysterious stone tablet beside it, and he can't help but question where he is. His eyes fixate on the stone tablet, noticing that something appears to be written on its surface. Before he can get a closer look, a sound from afar puts him on edge. He whips around just in time to see two people emerge from the darkness. He's stunned to see one of them is Kang Chang-ho, who seems just as surprised and calls out Kim Kyoryo's name. Kyoryo, however, is more concerned with the other hunter, trying to figure out who this stranger is. Now, the three hunters are gathered before a strange statue, and Kyoryo is completely bewildered, unable to comprehend the bizarre situation he's found himself in. Kang Chang-ho casually remarks to the other man, Jung Ha-seong, about hearing he was in Singapore, and Ha-seong confirms he just returned. Kyoryo quietly observes their exchange, noting that they don't seem particularly close. Trying to make sense of it all, Kyoryo asks if they know each other, but a sudden shock seems to hit him before he can get an answer. Completely lost, Kyoryo finally asks just who this man is. The man is revealed to be Jung Ha-seong, the #1 ranked hunter in all of Korea. The revelation hits Kyoryo hard. He's shocked to be in the presence of someone so much more impressive than he could have ever expected. Kang Chang-ho casually mentions that while people consider Ha-seong a national hero, it's not important since Kyoryo is clueless. He moves on, formally introducing the F-rank Kyoryo. Kyoryo manages a simple hello, which Ha-seong quietly acknowledges. Hae-sung offers a polite greeting but continues to stare intently at Kyoryo, making him feel uneasy. Kyoryo can't help but wonder why the top-ranked hunter is scrutinizing him for so long. Setting aside the introductions for later, Ha-seong cuts to the chase, asking if they were also suddenly and unwillingly pulled into this location. Both Kang Chang-ho and Kyoryo confirm that's exactly what happened to them. Kyoryo is then surprised to see Ha-seong use a sophisticated watch to analyze their surroundings. He's amazed, having never known that analyzers with such a sleek design even existed. The watch displays a grim result. They are inside an unknown gate with an EX rank. Ha-seong confirms their location and voices his concern, admitting that a gate of this level is going to be troublesome. Unfamiliar with the term, Kyoryo pulls out his phone, intending to look up what an EX rank signifies. But his confusion only deepens when he sees the screen is filled with static. His phone isn't working at all. Kang Chang-ho sighs, realizing he entered without a protective case and worries the gate's interference will break his own phone. At that moment, Ha-seong's sharp eyes spot something important, a slab with writing on it. Ha-seong reads the inscription, which says that the symbol of true faith will become the key. Hearing this, Kang Chang-ho immediately wonders if this is the clue they need to clear the gate. They both realize their path forward is limited. Ha-seong confirms that the only way to proceed seems to be through a large door ahead of them. Taking the lead, Ha-seong steps up to the enormous door and tries to push it open with his own strength. However, despite his efforts, the massive door doesn't budge even a little. Kang Chang-ho points out the obvious, the door isn't moving at all. Ha-seong then turns and asks for his help, leaving Chang-ho surprised by the request. Ha-sung admits to Chang-ho that his own strength is insufficient to open the door. Feeling like he has no other option, Kang Chang-ho reluctantly agrees to help. With that, he approaches the door, getting into position to help push it open. As Chang-ho moves closer, Ha-sung turns his head to look at him intently. Chang-ho meets his gaze, observing Ha-sung just as carefully. In a sudden and unexpected move, Ha-sung thrusts his palm forward, unleashing a powerful flame attack. An immense torrent of fire erupts from his hand, slamming directly against the huge gate. When the flames subsided, Kang Chang-ho stepped up, activating his own power for a more direct approach. He began to pummel the unyielding door, striking it again and again with immense strength. Our hero watched, completely shocked by the raw power on display. It reminded him just how special S-rank hunters are among those who awaken to mana. He knew they were an extremely small number of people, individuals granted exceptional talent and possessing truly monstrous abilities. Yet, even with their combined power, the gate wasn't even scratched. He found it hard to believe, wondering how two hunters of their caliber could be stopped by a single door. Kang Chang-ho finally stopped, admitting they had reached a clear conclusion: the gate couldn't be opened by brute force. Jeong Ha-sung stood by in silent agreement. With their attempts exhausted, our hero turned, a new idea forming in his mind as he realized there was only one thing left to try. His attention shifted to the imposing lion statue standing before the gate, convinced that it must hold the answer. As King Chang-ho carefully observed the lion statue, a thoughtful sound escaped him, his mind racing to find a solution. His initial confusion began to clear as he noticed a peculiar detail, a potential opening that changed everything. He realized the statue had a hole that seemed perfectly sized for an arm, a discovery that felt less like a coincidence and more like a deliberate invitation. Faced with a sealed gate, King Chang-ho points out a hole in a nearby statue, casually suggesting it looks just the right size for an arm. While Jeong Ha-sung remains silent, the MC immediately dismisses the idea, thinking there's no way that could be the solution. But the MC knows their situation is dire. If they can't open the door, they're completely trapped, and since they came unprepared, their food will eventually run out. As the MC contemplates their fate, he's startled to see Jeong Ha-sung wordlessly approach the lion statue with grim determination. Without a second thought, Ha-sung shoves his arm deep into the statue's mouth. In response to his action, the massive gate immediately begins to react. Incredibly, the gate creaks open, leaving the MC stunned that the risky plan actually worked. After the initial shock, the MC turns to Ha-seong, sensing something is wrong and asking him if he's alright. He then sees the terrible cost of their freedom. Ha-seong's hand is horribly beaten and bruised. Ha-seong quietly reveals that his blood was drained by the statue. The MC is horrified, unable to believe what he's hearing. Ha-seong explains the terrifying ordeal, saying he was so shocked he tried to pull his arm free, but it was stuck fast. He admits he was so desperate he even considered cutting off his own shoulder to escape. Kang Chang-ho seems unimpressed by the harrowing tale, quickly suggesting that since the door is now open, they should get moving. However, the MC is struck by a bad feeling, internally questioning if pressing forward is truly the right thing to do. Despite his apprehension, the three of them proceed together down the long, empty hallway. As they continue, Kang Chang-ho lets out a frustrated sigh, annoyed that they've run into the same obstacle again. Before them stands another identical lion statue, much to his exasperation. Jeong Ha-sung, however, remains focused, stating that they don't have any time to waste standing around. Reiterating their need to get out quickly, he wastes no time and swiftly places his arm inside the statue's mouth. Once the path is clear, he confidently urges the others to follow him. After traveling through yet another hallway, a weary sigh escapes from Kang Chang-ho. He can't believe his eyes, they've encountered another one of the statues. The MC silently observes the repeating pattern, realizing the solution is always to stick an arm into the statue. He wonders if the trial can really be this simple. Just then, Jeong Ha-sung interrupts the silence, asking Hunter Kang Chang-ho if he would mind opening the next door. Chang-ho immediately gets defensive, demanding to know why he's being chosen. Ah-sung explains that the rate of blood absorption from the statue has changed. He admits that while the first time wasn't a big deal, the second sacrifice left him feeling a little dizzy, suggesting the cost is increasing. Because the demand for blood tends to grow in these kinds of dungeons, Ha-sung proposes they should all take turns to share the burden. Chang-ho, however, brushes off the concern, remarking that Ha-sung has been handling it just fine by himself so far. He then goads Ha-sung, suggesting he should just continue leading the way until the very end. Ha-sung's expression immediately sours, his face twisting with pure annoyance at the blatant disrespect. Ha-sung coldly points out that Chang-ho is being uncooperative with their strategy. Chang-ho scoffs, arrogantly asking if Ha-seong is even aware of his high hunter ranking, implying he's above such menial tasks. Completely unfazed, Ha-seong states that he couldn't care less about rankings. He then repeats his demand with a steely gaze, telling Hunter Kang Chang-ho to cooperate. Chang-ho meets his gaze with a defiant smirk, challenging him by asking what he'll do if he refuses. The MC, watching this tense exchange, worries that they're about to start fighting. Chang Ho then explains his position, arguing that if the blood cost keeps rising, his turn could be fatal. He claims he should at least have the right to choose his turn to ensure fairness for everyone. Then, Chang Ho shifts his attention, pointing directly at the MC. He reminds everyone that there's another hunter present and suggests they should ask him to contribute too. The sudden focus leaves the MC completely stunned. Being dragged into the conflict, the MC grimly realizes Chang Ho has a point. He's suddenly reminded of a chilling statistic. The survival rate for an EX rank gate is only about 60%. He realizes that even without monsters, this place is far from safe. It's a maze designed to move forward only by offering human blood into a hole just large enough for one person's arm. The horrifying conclusion becomes clear: the only solution to this dungeon is to sacrifice one of their own. The weight of their situation crashes down on him as he thinks to himself just how completely screwed they are. The tension thickens as Jung Ha-sung angrily questions the suggestion of making an F rank handle the job, especially when 2 S rank hunters are present. But before the argument can continue, Haesung's sharp senses pick up on an unexpected presence nearby. Instantly, all 3 of them turn their attention towards the source of the disturbance. Lurking in the dungeon's gloom, they find their silent observer, a monster. It's a large, menacing wolf, and it has them in its sights. The MC is completely bewildered, wondering what the hell happened to the reports that claimed there was nothing strange here. The wolf lets out a low growl, baring its sharp fangs in a clear threat. In a flash, the beast leaps forward, its claws extended as it dashes straight for the MC. Completely terrified, the MC shuts his eyes tight, bracing for the attack he can't possibly dodge. But in that split second, Haesung moves, his sword lighting up as he quickly activates a skill to intercept the monster. With a swift, decisive movement, Haesung slices through the wolf, intercepting it just moments before it could injure the MC. The monster is completely destroyed by the flaming sword, leaving the MC utterly stunned. He questions if what he just saw was real flames appearing from thin air, and wonders if it's some form of primitive sorcery. Turning his gaze to Kang Chang Ho, the MC concludes that this incredible power must be his companion's special ability. But just as he's processing this revelation, his attention is suddenly drawn to a new threat. He spots another wolf, this one running directly towards Kang Chang Ho. The creature closes the distance in an instant, dashing with incredible speed. As the wolf leaps high into the air to attack, the MC shouts a desperate warning for Kang Chang Ho to watch his back. Heeding the warning, Kang Chang Ho instantly spins around to face the airborne threat. Without a moment's hesitation, he meets the wolf mid-air, smashing his massive, bear-like arm directly into its body. The impact is devastating, and the monster is completely crushed in an instant. Our hero watches in disbelief, stunned by the insane display of strength. He can't help but wonder if Kang Chang Ho's awakened skill is some kind of physical enhancement. Kang Chang Ho, however, seems unimpressed. He calmly assesses that the creature's body was weaker than he expected, probably on the level of a C-rank beast. But Jong Ha-sung quickly cuts in, warning him that it's far too early to relax and urging him to look at what's happening nearby. Following his gaze, they see a chilling sight. The dungeon wall itself has begun to manifest eerie drawings of wolves across its surface. Before they can process this, the drawings begin to stir, and a wolf monster starts to physically emerge from the flat wall. Then another appears, and another, as multiple wolves pull themselves from the stone, their forms taking shape in the real world. The wall becomes a horrifying portal, unleashing swarms of wolves into the chamber, their numbers growing by the second. But something is unsettlingly strange about this pack. The wolves seem to be poisoning themselves as they spill into the room. In mere moments, the sheer number of beasts is overwhelming, and they quickly form a tight circle around all 3 hunters. The ring of wolves begins to slowly close in, their predatory gazes fixed on the trapped party, cutting off any hope of escape. Jung Ha-sung calmly sizes up the situation, noting that while the beasts aren't individually powerful, their overwhelming numbers will be annoying to deal with. He quickly issues a command to Kang Chang Ho, telling him to cover their rear. Kang Chang Ho, however, isn't having it. He snaps back, telling Jong Ha-sung to just worry about his own job. Before their argument can escalate, the time for strategy is over. The wolves launch a coordinated, simultaneous attack from all sides. Reacting instantly, both hunters drop into their battle stances, bracing themselves for the violent clash. The battle erupts instantly. Kang Chang wastes no time, crushing the attacking wolves with his sheer strength. Meanwhile, Haesung unleashes his own abilities, burning the creatures to a crisp with his powerful flames. But despite their efforts, the wave of wolves is relentless, their assault showing no signs of stopping. The hunters, however, are just as determined, refusing to ease up and matching the ferocity of the pack. Realizing they need more firepower, Kang Chang begins to channel a massive amount of energy into his fist. He then launches a devastating punch that becomes a projectile of pure force, completely destroying the wolves in his path. Yet, even after that incredible display of power, the wolf pack doesn't falter, continuing their charge. It's Haesong's turn to step up. He engulfs his sword in roaring flames, preparing a powerful counterattack. With a swift and decisive movement, he slices through the remaining wolves, clearing the area with his searing flame attack. After clearing the last of the wolves, he's left momentarily stunned by the scene unfolding before him. He watches in awe as two S-rank hunters battle fiercely, struck by how incredibly powerful they already are. The focus shifts to one of the hunters, Jong Ha-sung, who realizes he's facing more enemies than he anticipated. He can feel his stamina dropping at an alarming rate from the blood he's lost. A grim thought crosses his mind. At this rate, he won't be able to hold out much longer. But just as despair sets in, his gaze falls upon a strange statue nearby. He looks closer and sees its eyes are glowing with an eerie light, drawing his full attention. As he stares at the glowing eyes, something clicks in his mind and a sudden realization dawns on him. At that exact moment, another wolf dives toward him from above, but Ha-seong is calm, now understanding the situation completely. Without a moment's hesitation, he swiftly shifts his stance, preparing to meet the new threat head-on. With a fluid motion, he unleashes his flame sword, slicing clean through the attacking wolf. As the immediate threat is neutralized, a moment of clarity washes over Jong Ha-sung. He observes the outcome, a quiet understanding dawning on him as he realizes this is the nature of his current reality. Meanwhile, the S-rank hunter Kang Chung vents his frustration, effortlessly crushing a wolf under his might. His companion, Kang Chung-ho, voices his own annoyance at the sheer number of monsters they've had to deal with. Watching this display of overwhelming force, our hero is left in utter awe, realizing for the first time what the power of an S-rank truly means. He marvels at how they managed to slaughter all the monsters in what felt like an instant. This raw power makes him reconsider his own plans. Even if he got his magic back, conquering Earth would be a difficult task. At the same time, Jong Ha-sung calls out to Kang Chung-ho and Kim Ki-ryo. He urgently directs their attention toward a new development in the room. Jong Ha-sung points out that the eyes of a nearby lion statue have begun to glow ominously. He quickly deduces the gate's cruel mechanism. If a blood offering isn't made within a certain time frame, a wave of monsters is automatically triggered. As if to prove his theory, another shadowy wolf begins to emerge directly from the chamber walls. Watching this unfold, the MC has a sudden, chilling realization about the true rules of this deadly dungeon. Just as Jong Ha-sung starts to grasp the grim implications of this discovery, a wolf lunges at him from his blind spot. Without a moment's hesitation, Ha-sung's instincts take over and he reacts to the surprise attack. In a fluid motion, he draws his sword, ready to face the beast. He swiftly turns and plunges the blade deep into the wolf, neutralizing the immediate threat. With the wolf dispatched, Haesong's mind races, considering what their next move must be now that the rules are clear. Meanwhile, Kang Chung-ho looks on in confusion, asking if this means they're dealing with 4 separate time limits. Before anyone can answer him, the walls of the dungeon ripple and a fresh wave of wolves begins pouring into the chamber. The MC is completely startled by the sudden and overwhelming appearance of more monsters. Seeing the MC frozen in shock, Ha-seong urgently calls out his name, Kim Ki-ryo, trying to snap him back to reality. At the same time, Kang Chung-ho whips around, his attention suddenly fixed on something else. Ignoring the new wave of wolves, he breaks into a desperate sprint directly towards the statue at the center of the room. With a single-minded determination, Kang Chen forces his way through the overwhelming swarm of monsters, pushing past the vicious attacks. He finally reaches his destination, plunging his hand directly into the stone mouth of the lion statue. The moment his hand makes contact, a wave of energy seems to ripple through the room. All around them, the wolf monsters begin to crumble and disintegrate. In moments, nothing is left of the horde but scattered remnants, the immediate threat completely vanishing. As the last of the monsters fades away, a massive gate grinds open, revealing the path forward. The main character watches in surprise, finding it hard to believe that everything was resolved so cooperatively. Breaking the silence, Kang Chung-ho asks who will proceed next, and Jong Ha-sung suggests they should take turns. Jong Ha-sung immediately expresses doubt, questioning whether an F-rank hunter could even manage what lies ahead. The main character can't help but think that this dismissive attitude is exactly why someone like Kang Chan is considered a national hero. Our hero reflects on Kang Chan's actions, realizing that ever since his F-rank status was revealed, Kang Chan has protected him, even removing him from the sacrifice list. Thanks to this, he's moved forward without a scratch, but a feeling of guilt is beginning to surface. With these thoughts weighing on his mind, the 3 hunters continue to make their way deeper into the gate. As they press on, it becomes obvious that the journey is taking its toll on Jong Ha-sung, who starts to sweat and breathe heavily. Noticing his comrade's struggle, the main character asks with concern if Jong Ha-sung is doing okay. Jong Ha-sung quickly dismisses the concern, claiming he's fine and that the exit must be close since these gates are usually small. However, our hero can see the truth, observing that Ha-sung's face is only getting paler. He feels a small sense of relief, thinking it's lucky that it's Kang Chan's turn to open the next door. But before they can proceed, Kang Chan stops and calls out to Jong Ha-sung, Kang Chan suggests they should stop for a moment. When Ha-sung asks why, Kang Chan explains that there's no guarantee the exit is behind the next door, and he can see that everyone is starting to feel the strain. He proposes that they might have missed a clue and should retrace their steps to check the previous rooms. Jung Ha-sung immediately grows suspicious, accusing Kang Chan of just trying to buy more time. The tension thickens as Hae-sung reminds him that following the given conditions is standard procedure for clearing an EX rank gate, a fact he knows Kang Chan is well aware of. He then levels a serious accusation, asking if Kang Chan's real plan is to strike him down during the chaos of a monster wave, just like what happened during the Choi Jin incident. Kang Chan offers only silence in response. Fed up with the delay, Jung Ha-sung tells him to stop dragging things out and just open the door. Yielding to the pressure, Kang Chang-ho tells everyone to calm down, agreeing to open it right away. He clarifies that he never said he wouldn't help them figure out the dungeon strategy. As he walks toward the lion statue, he adds that they're misunderstanding the situation, insisting that the incident with Choi Jin was purely an accident. He assures them he isn't some crazed lunatic who would attack other hunters without a valid reason. He even admits that given his criminal record, he understands why they might not trust him, but he calls out Jung Ha-seong directly, telling him he's being far too suspicious. He suggests this eagerness to escape is causing Ha-seong to rush their decisions. With his arm inside the statue's mouth, Kang Chang-ho says he'll open the door for now but urges them to think about what he said. He claims that even if it were someone else's turn, his suggestion would still be to go back and check first. Hearing this surprisingly logical argument, our hero begins to reconsider his opinion, thinking that Kang Chang-ho is far more reasonable than he initially thought. He even wonders if the rumors about him were just baseless gossip. As the thought crosses his mind, King Chang-ho grimaces, holding back the pain from the trap. Noticing his pained expression, Jung Hae-shung cautiously asks if he is alright. Kang Chang-ho dismisses the concern, explaining that he has recovery potions and can probably open the door a couple more times after taking them. Reassured, Jung Ha-sung decides they should press on a bit further, suggesting they look for another way if the next room doesn't hold an exit, all while Kang Chang-ho reaches into his pack for a potion. Watching the exchange, our hero realizes that if this continues, they might soon need to find a way to support Kang Chang-ho. But just as that thought crossed his mind, our hero's eyes widened in absolute shock. In a sudden, brutal turn of events, Kang Chang-ho lifted the potion bottle high, preparing to strike. He swung it down with full force, connecting directly with Jung Ha-sung's head. The impact was too much, and Ha-sung immediately lost consciousness. His body went limp, collapsing onto the cold dungeon floor. Kang Chang-ho observed the result, noting to himself that his method worked even on a powerful S rank. Our hero, meanwhile, was seething, realizing with fury that Chang-ho had foolishly weaponized a simple recovery potion. He furiously demanded to know what on earth Kang Chang-ho was doing. In response, Chang-ho simply uttered our hero's name, Kim Kyoryo, setting a grave tone for what was to come. He then began to explain, asking Kyoryo if he had ever heard of a gate that appeared in Northern Europe called the Iron Maiden. Chang-ho revealed that this dungeon was almost identical to it, operating under one horrifying rule: for anyone to escape, one of the matched hunters had to be sacrificed. The weight of this revelation left Kyoryo stunned. Kyoryo immediately understood the terrible implication. Chang-ho intended to sacrifice Jung Ha-sung. To justify his actions, Chang-ho calmly stated that recent statistics for X-rank dungeons showed a survival rate of only 60%, regardless of a hunter's rank. Holding Jung Ha-sung up, Chang-ho continued his justification, arguing that those odds weren't worth betting a life on. He claimed he only wanted to ensure they handled the situation correctly. Kyoryo found himself agreeing with the cold logic. If the dungeon truly required a human life to proceed, then a scapegoat was necessary. Ideally, it would be Chang-ho or Ha-seong, but Kyoryo felt he was in no position to choose who would be sacrificed. As Chang-ho dragged the unconscious hunter toward the statue, Kyoryo felt the best course of action was to simply go along with the S-ranker's plan. But a wave of doubt washed over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was fundamentally unfair to force an F-rank hunter to take the fall when two S-rank hunters were present. His conscience screamed at him, the whole situation was just plain wrong. Just as Chang-ho was about to force Ha-seong's hand into the statue, Kyoryo couldn't stay silent any longer and yelled for him to wait. He stepped forward, offering to open the next door himself, and demanded that Chang-ho put Ha-seong down. Chang-ho scoffed, mockingly asking if Kyoryo had suddenly grown a conscience and why he hadn't just stayed quiet while someone else took the risk. Chang-ho tried to persuade him, promising he would make sure Kyoryo survived, but Kyoryo knew they weren't in a position to be negotiating. Kyoryo frantically tried to figure out how he could possibly save Jung Ha-sung. Chang-ho, however, calmly observed that judging by the statue's blood-sucking intensity, the trial would likely be over soon. And just then, with a heavy groan, the gate began to open. A blindingly bright light poured out from the gateway, leaving Chang-ho completely stunned and confused. As his vision cleared, Chang-ho saw that the light had come from a massive, open gate that now stood before him in the new room. He stared in disbelief, wondering if this could possibly be the exit. He couldn't believe it might all be over so simply. But then he remembered the recent appearance of the Iron Maiden, and realized that must have been the sign that the dungeon was truly ending. His attention was then drawn to something else in the room, a striking statue of a woman holding a glittering golden item. Chang-ho felt like he was losing his mind. He had been so sure that a living sacrifice was required, which was the entire reason he had targeted Jung Ha-sung. A wave of anxiety washed over him as he realized the deep trouble he'd be in if Ha-sung woke up and complained. While Chang-ho was lost in his worries, the main character slowly approached the fountain to get a better look at the gleaming prize. Picking it up, he saw that it was a golden bracelet. He examined the intricate object, wondering aloud if it was some kind of magic tool. He suggested to Kang Chang-ho that the bracelet could be used as an apology for Jung Ha-sung once he awakens. But Kang Chang-ho dismisses the idea, reminding him that messing with the #1 ranked hunter is a serious offense that can't just be ignored. He continues, explaining that the Hunters Association will definitely not let this slide. Kang Chang-ho then mutters that everything would have been so much easier if they had just sacrificed that guy from the start. A chilling thought crosses Kang Chang-ho's mind. Since they are still inside the gate, perhaps he should just kill Kim Kyu-yo now. Sensing the sudden, dangerous shift in the atmosphere, Kyu-yo is completely taken aback. Kang Chang-ho reasons that a body would conveniently vanish when the gate closes anyway. The only real issue, he considers, is the sole witness to the event. The terrifying implication of Kang Chang-ho's words sinks in, and Kim Kyu-yo lets out a small sound of pure fear. Kang Chang-ho explains his grim logic, pointing out that from Kyu-yo's perspective, there's no reason to keep quiet about what happened. The horrified hunter asks if this means he plans to kill him too. But Kang Chang-ho dismisses the notion as ridiculous, assuring Kim Kyu-yo he has no intention of killing him. Instead, he explains he just needs a little favor. As he speaks, Kang Chang-ho places a heavy, intimidating hand on Kim Kyu-yo's shoulder, his grip making his intentions clear. Leaning in with a menacing expression, he finally reveals his request. He wants Kyu-yo to testify that he was the one who knocked out Jung Ha-sung. This all traced back to Kang Chang-ho's eyesight, which had improved to a superhuman level. He had obtained a rare item called the Dragon's Eye from an A-rank monster, the formidable Green Dragon. This powerful artifact granted him a variety of incredible functions. Not only could he see distant objects with perfect clarity and enhance his magic, but he could also gauge the awakening levels of others with just a glance. It was an ability that left almost nothing hidden from his sight. With such powerful eyes, he'd never had to squint to see anything clearly before. But looking at Kyu-yo for the first time, he wondered if he was seeing things wrong. Observing the mana surrounding Kyu-yo, he was baffled. It was a strange form of magic he had never seen. The total amount of power wasn't overwhelming, but he suspected Kyu-yo might possess that one skill hunters worldwide were desperate for. His mind flashed back to their initial encounter, recalling how he had asked for name and the simple reply he received, Kim Kyu-yo. Kang Chang-ho then questioned him about his hunter rank. Kyu-yo calmly replied that he was F rank. Instantly, Kang Chang-ho's mind screamed that he was a liar. He found it impossible to believe that a supposed F-rank hunter could look him straight in the eye with such composure. For ordinary people, or low-level awakened, high-ranking hunters like Kang Chang-ho were akin to giant, intimidating beasts. This overwhelming presence made normal life difficult. It had been ages since Kang Chang-ho could even visit a convenience store without causing a stir. So, the claim that Kim Kyu-yo was an F-rank was complete nonsense. Driven by a budding curiosity, Kang Chang-ho decided to provoke Kyu-yo just to see how he would react. He tested him with various scenarios, from simulating a sudden traffic accident to presenting him with a luxurious offer worth hundreds of millions. Yet, through everything, Kim Kyu-yo remained utterly expressionless, completely unfazed. Kang Chang-ho, so accustomed to being the center of attention, almost felt like this S-rank hunter was being ignored. But surprisingly, after a lifetime of intense reactions from others, he found that he actually liked Kyu-yo's indifference. Pleading with the boy, he clarified that his request had nothing to do with being bothered by his attitude. He then formally asked if Kyu-yo would be willing to testify that he was the one who had knocked out Jung Ha-sung. Kang Chang-ho explained the harsh reality of the situation, noting that even if Jung Ha-sung remembered the circumstances, it would be difficult to prove. In court, he warned, the testimonies from the other raiders would be given priority. He stressed that all Kyu-yo needed to do was say one specific thing to make this all go away. As Kyu-yo listened calmly, Kang Chang-ho laid out the proposed story, that there was some friction during the raid, forcing Kyu-yo to step in and calm Jung Ha-sung down. Kyu-yo finally spoke, asking what would happen if he were to refuse. Kang Chang-ho's reply was a thinly veiled threat, making it clear that if he were to be punished, he wouldn't be going down alone. Inwardly, however, Kang Chang-ho admitted to himself that he could actually handle the issue with Jung Ha-sung on his own. His true goal was different. As Kyu-yo stood there silently, Kang Chang-ho revealed his real curiosity, admitting he wanted to know what kind of ability the boy was hiding. He had expected that such an unreasonable threat would provoke a reaction if Kiryu was really hiding something. So, he was completely caught off guard when Kiryu simply agreed to his request. Kiryu nonchalantly asked for clarification, wanting to know if all he had to do was spread the story that he was the one who put Jung Ha-sung to sleep. Flustered by this easy compliance, Kang Chang-ho could only wonder why it was all so simple. Observing Kiryu's expression, Kang Chang-ho saw not even a hint of fear. He realized this meant Kiryu wasn't agreeing because he was scared of the threat. A new theory began to form in his mind. Perhaps Kiryu was simply trying to avoid any kind of friction altogether. Then he remembered something crucial Kiryu had said. He had claimed he currently couldn't enter S-rank gates, which strongly implied that he was able to in the past. This led Kang Chang-ho to a startling conclusion. Could Kim Kiryu actually be a high-level awakened one? He wondered if Kiryu had deliberately suppressed his magic, reducing it to the level of a mere insect. He imagined how incredibly suffocating that must feel, like being gagged and trapped in a straitjacket. Because of this perfect concealment, Kang Chang-ho realized he couldn't even begin to guess what type of awakener Kiryu truly was. Still, he questioned why someone would go to the extreme of lowering their level all the way to F-rank. He felt a desire to probe a bit more, but ultimately decided to commend Kiryu's careful planning instead. Putting his thoughts aside, Kang Chang-ho announced it was time to call it a day and finally get out of the damn dungeon. Meanwhile, Kiryu was experiencing a completely different kind of reaction, letting out a frustrated sigh as the tension finally began to recede. An overwhelming wave of relief washed over him as the reality sank in. He had somehow, against all odds, survived. With the immediate danger behind them, the three hunters turned and started to make their way out of the dungeon. Stepping out of the dungeon's gloom, the main character breathed a sigh of relief, realizing they were finally outside. But instead of a quiet exit, they were met with a massive crowd. Bystanders shouted in excitement, pointing out that hunters had at last emerged from what they were calling the third exit. Completely taken aback, the main character looked around, wondering why so many people had gathered in this place. Suddenly, they were swarmed by reporters, cameras flashing. The reporters clamored over one another, congratulating them on their survival and bombarding them with urgent questions about the kind of gate it was, the rank of the monsters inside, and whether there were any other survivors. The questions kept coming, with one reporter demanding to know how many hunters had been in the initial raid party. Overwhelmed by the chaos, the main character could only stammer, completely bewildered by the situation. His mind latched onto a single, confusing detail from the reporter's frantic questions, and he quietly wondered to himself what they meant by a gate. As that thought crossed his mind, he turned to see not one, but multiple gates shimmering behind him. This only deepened his confusion, as he was sure all the exits were supposed to be gathered in one place. Just then, a figure emerged from one of the portals, adding to the chaos. The reporters erupted as they recognized Hunter Kang Chang-ho carrying an unconscious Jung Ha-sung on his back. The sight of two S-rankers appearing together was unbelievable, but the initial shock quickly turned to bewilderment among the press. The most pressing question on everyone's mind was clear. Why had a powerful hunter like Jung Ha-sung collapsed? An official from the Hunters Association pushed through the crowd, informing Kang Chang-ho that he needed to take a statement. The officer acknowledged he had many questions, but said the top priority was finding out why Jung Ha-sung was unconscious. Kang Chang-ho began to explain the situation. The officer wondered if some strange gimmick inside the gate was to blame. Kang Chang-ho denied this, clarifying that there had been some internal friction over choosing a sacrifice. He then pointed towards our protagonist, leveling a stunning accusation that it was he who had knocked out Jung Ha-sung. Hearing the blatant lie, our hero could only scoff to himself, disgusted that Kang Chang-ho would start twisting the truth the second he was out of the dungeon. The association officer, completely shocked by Kang Chang-ho's story, demanded he say something that made sense. She couldn't believe an S-rank hunter could be taken down by some unknown person she'd never even seen before. Our hero felt a small bit of relief, at least glad that the association employee was thinking rationally. Deciding to cut through the deception, she directly told Kang Chang-ho to stop lying and speak honestly. Following this, the officer turned her suspicion on Kang Chang-ho, directly asking if he was the one responsible for what happened to Jung Ha-sung. Instead of answering, a smug, knowing smirk spread across Kang Chang-ho's face. He then shifted his gaze to our hero, trying to drag him into the mess by telling him to say something instead of just standing there listening. The sudden attention completely caught our hero off guard. Realizing he was being cornered, our hero took a deep breath and resolved himself, seeing he had no other choice. He started to explain, immediately capturing the association officer's confused and undivided attention. Then, with everyone watching, he calmly admitted that he was the one who had knocked out Hunter Jung Ha-sung. The sudden, unexpected confession left everyone completely stunned and at a loss for words. He quickly clarified that he never meant to cause any harm, explaining that he only put the hunter to sleep briefly to ensure a smoother raid. He promised to personally apologize to Jung Ha-sung as soon as he woke up. The officer still found it impossible to believe, thinking it could only be done by another S-rank hunter. All the while, Kang Chang-ho kept desperately insisting that he wasn't the one responsible. Sweat beaded on Kang Cheng-ho's face as he struggled to catch his breath, putting on a desperate show. The association officer, still trying to make sense of everything, cautiously called out to the seemingly exhausted man. Growing more desperate, Chang-ho pleaded with the officer to just take a good look at his condition. He insisted that he was in no state to do anything to Jung Ha-sung. The officer fell silent, considering the possibility. But our hero saw right through the performance. He knew that while Chang-ho had lost blood, the injury wasn't severe, meaning he was deliberately faking the extent of his weakness. Suddenly, a realization began to ripple through the crowd of reporters as they connected the dots. The press erupted into chaos, turning their attention and their questions toward our main character. They frantically asked if he was the one who had taken down the S-rank hunter, if he was truly responsible for Jung Ha-sung's state. Amidst the commotion, he gave a simple, calm answer, confirming their wild theories. He took a moment, steeling his resolve, ready to face whatever came next. Then, with unwavering confidence, he stated it plainly for everyone to hear, he was the one who did it. But the very next day, the situation had taken a sharp turn. Ha-sung found himself in a hospital, reading a newspaper article that reported a startling version of events. According to the news, he had been found unconscious, an incident that was now causing friction with another hunter. Frustration immediately boiled up within him as he read the words, firmly believing that Kim Kyo was the one responsible for putting him in this situation. If you're still here, you clearly enjoy the content. So go ahead and watch this video about a barbarian who suddenly finds himself in a civilized society. With his immense, almost monstrous power, he shakes the entire world and dominates a civilization that has no idea what he's truly capable of. See.